Reporter, he says that temperatures continue to fall rapidly across the globe and calls on comrades not to give up. He says the government hasn't forgotten about them and they can survive the crisis if they help each other. The reporter becomes inaudible. At that moment, the broadcast is cut off. The sound of dripping water can be heard in a dark room. Someone is shouting Han Feng's name. Han Feng explains that we need to get closer. Han Feng meets Huna and asks why she came. Han Feng tells Hyunya to come in quickly because it's dangerous outside. The girl kisses Han Feng, who blushes and is surprised. They are kissing. They were couples before the apocalypse. Han Feng says that they haven't seen each other for so long and asks what happened to her. Huna says she just realized she only loves Han Feng. She says that what happened opened her eyes, and now she understands that it would be best for her to be with her interlocutor, because he also loves her and will always be there. She tells him to feel her heart beating if he doesn't believe her words, and explains that she is ready to do anything just to let him stay close to her. Han Feng is surprised, asking if it's okay. Han Feng touches his pants pocket with his hand. He blushes and breathes heavily. Huna says the man doesn't even realize how much his words mean to her, but now she asks for silence for a bit. The man asks for silence. She says to just close her eyes. The guy quietly says He says he closed it and asks what's next. A man with red eyes raises his hand with a gun and strikes. The man explains that they are now living in another world, and they cannot afford to feed him as well, and Huna is surprised that he killed him. The man explains that she knew how everything would turn out, and should not pretend to be an innocent lamb. The man says he'll see what the idiot has stashed away, and if he calculates everything correctly, they'll be able to survive until help arrives. Han Feng says his hands are not moving and he is dying, then explains that this is how it feels. Huna says he shouldn't touch her now, and the man explains that he wants to reward her well for her performance and asks if she'll be flirtatious again. They look at the dying Han Feng with a grin. Han Feng says that if he had a second life, he would never run after it. Han Feng is surprised that this is. He says the light is so warm, that he is going to heaven. There's something going on with his hand. He screams. Han Feng asks where he is and sits down on the bed, which is illuminated by sunlight through a window with a fluttering curtain. Half an hour passes. He says it's so warm and he's already forgotten this feeling. Han Feng explains that he looked at the calendar and today is June 28th. He has gone back in time 2 weeks before the apocalypse, which begins on July 15th. He is surprised that heaven has given him a second life. Han Feng explains that there is one very strange correction, and says that all the time since his awakening, his right hand glows red. He explains that she no longer shows any signs of existence at all. At first he thought he was imagining it, and then he says that she doesn't hurt. There are no unpleasant sensations, just warmth. Han Feng sneezes. He is surprised and says that it is now green. Han Feng is surprised to see his hand glowing with green flames and says that it has become bigger. He is breathing heavily and holding his leg, which is glowing green. Han Feng says he emits a multicolored glow from his hand and doesn't understand how science is going to explain it. He is surprised that it has become smaller and explains that the green glow is somewhat unstable, constantly changing in size, while the red one did not do that. Han Feng explains that he suddenly felt tired and asks if it was related to the green light. He's screaming, "What is this thing?" Han Feng is surprised that this is like some kind of comic book, like the main character after rebirth. Han Feng says that there is always some inappropriately strong ability, but it turns out that there is no reaction. He was also very hungry, but there's nothing in the fridge. Han Feng says it's bad and he feels like he's going to pass out. The guy is surprised. Han Feng says that roasted soybeans are a delicacy that doesn't exist in a post-apocalyptic world, and explains that it's not a full meal, but if he's short on food, he'll go grocery shopping afterward. He takes a pea with his green hand and throws it into his mouth. An explosion occurs. Han Feng is surprised when he finds a branch with leaves in his mouth. He spat them out. He wonders what happened and where the beans went. Han Feng says the fatigue has also disappeared. Green light is somehow connected with this plant. He plucks the fruit from the branch. Han Feng says it's a bean pod. He opens the pod, and light emanates from it. He is surprised that this is his ability and says that he wants to learn more about it. He says that there are more important things to do now and that we need to stock up on food because the apocalypse is already near. There is a crowd of people on the street. Han Feng recounts the events, explaining that the light was red at first, then changed to green, which grew brighter and then dimmer, causing his heart to beat faster and fatigue to set in. He explains that he touched the soybeans with his glowing hand, and they transformed into full-fledged beings. He wonders what kind of ability this is. The woman speaks to Han Feng. Han Feng turns around. Huna asks if he's decided to go shopping too and explains that it's a coincidence and could be fate. Han Feng is surprised when he calls Li Hyun. He reveals that Li Huna is the girl he has been dreaming about for 3 years now and explains that he has done everything to make her happy. He says that he understood perfectly well that for her he was a backup airfield. Han Feng says he never thought she would kill him. He says to stay calm. Han Feng says that now is not the time for revenge. First we must prepare for the end of the world. Huna says she's talking to him and wonders why he's frozen. Han Feng says she is so beautiful today that he is completely speechless. Huna says she's surprised since when the guy became such a romantic. Huna smiles and suggests that since they met so well, they go shopping. Han Feng says he can't today. She is surprised. Han Feng says he's had enough and refuses to be her wallet on legs. Waldemar in City A is the largest supermarket in the entire eastern region. The story goes that when the new Ice Age arrived, the entire store was emptied overnight, and someone was very lucky. Han Feng says he needs to buy as many things as he can before the apocalypse. He explains that it's necessary to have 3 months' worth of food and water, medicine, protective gear, tools, transportation, and weapons to survive after the end of the world. He explains that food, winter clothing, medicine, various small items, and fuel, a lot of things. But there is one nuance. He must somehow manage to buy everything. He is surprised. It explains that the credit assessment has been completed and a loan of up to 168,000 yuan is available, and it is suggested to follow the link to receive the loan or send an F in response if the offer is not interesting. He is surprised that it has completely slipped his mind. He says that it's easy to get into debt, and the best part is that you won't have to pay anything back because the end of the world is coming any day now. Huna notices a banana bounce off the floor and roll away. She says that the worthless person dared to refuse her and explains how infuriating it is. That this stupid loser, who doesn't even have his own car, would write to her at least once more. She is surprised by a sharp sound. She meets Han Feng. She is surprised. The girl asks if it's his car, and Han Feng explains that he just bought it. He tells her that his father's business in the States is doing well, and he decided to give him a little treat. He also explains that he just drove him to the airport. The girl is surprised. She is embarrassed. She explains that she now understands what happened and tells what she thought about why he didn't want to go for a walk. That he was so cold, and says that she thought that he had decided to leave her completely. Han Feng says stupid. The guy says he can't afford to relax. Han Feng says he will never abandon the girl and can't live without her. The girl smiles. Huna says that the man is very important to her and suggests having dinner together and watching a movie to get to know him better. She asks what he thinks, but at that moment Han Feng leaves. She is surprised. The guy says that he has his mouth full and needs to take all this stuff, but the girl is surprised and couldn't say anything. She wonders why a man needs so much stuff, and he explains that they're just necessary things. Han Feng explains that he has a birthday present for the woman. She says she's looking forward to it and goes home, and Han Feng wishes her luck. She says everything is going as it should. Han Feng says it's best if she doesn't know about his warehouse. He explains that the warehouse is the key to his survival, the rope that holds him over the abyss, and when the world ends, she'll get what she deserves, especially the guy who killed him. It says July 15th was the day it all started, with a snowstorm and temperatures dropping to minus 20 degrees Celsius. The alarm clock shows Thursday, June 29th. Han Feng explains that temperatures will continue to drop to minus 70 degrees Celsius over the next month. Snow and ice will cover the entire world, and it will be impossible to go outside. He explains that food is provided. He explains that canned goods are the best bet, and the boxes should be sealed so the neighbors don't suspect anything. He says that he will carry all the fragile supplies himself at night when no one is looking. There will be no electricity for obvious reasons, so he needs a generator and fuel to feed himself. When the apocalypse begins, there will be no heating, and he will convert his home to a separate heating system, while also reinforcing the windows and doors to prevent damage. The text reports on the modification of the shelter. A separate room is intended for storing resources. The guy explains that he finished all this only on July 14th, one day before the first drop in temperature. The guy says that now it is explained that the most interesting thing is to study the ability. To survive the coming ice age, they explain, reserves alone will not be enough. The ability to control plants is his only hope. Han Feng says that he grew all these beans with his own ability. She's kind of fickle and he still hasn't figured out how to call her. Han Feng says it's time to taste them and hopes they're edible. He says that it's edible and that's great, and then explains that he now knows that he can create food. Han Feng explains that the hardest part now is figuring out how to do it. He explains that so far he has only tried this with beans. I wonder if this works with other plants. He is surprised that he lost consciousness. The guy is screaming that his head is splitting. It seems that the ability hits the brain and body very hard. He takes rice from the plate with a spoon. Han Feng says he found out something. He says that before passing out, he tried using the ability on different plants. Han Feng is surprised that some plants did not react at all. But some of them grew just like beans. Others even exploded. Han Feng explains that after the explosion they turned into very light embers and wonders what the hell this is. It is explained that these coals can be used for warming up well. Han Feng says he definitely won't freeze now. He tried many more times. Han Feng concentrates and says that you need to concentrate and focus on your breathing. He's doing it, but Han Feng loses consciousness again. He says he couldn't find a pattern, but there must be some principle there. He explains that he has gained at least a minimal understanding of how to activate this ability. Han Feng says the key is in his subconscious. He says he imagined himself in the wilderness, in the middle of nature, that he merges with the wild world in body and soul. He opened his eyes slightly. Now he can summon the ability. There are various products on the table. Fish, pieces of meat, a chicken leg and a bowl of chopped vegetables. Now he'll try it with meat. He says there is no reaction and explains that the skill only works on plants. The guy screams that he can't live without meat. Han Feng doesn't give up. He says that during meditation he feels two different energies and that he hasn't tried the red one yet. Han Feng says the red light must show itself. He explains that meat should not be fried, but rather eaten raw. He says something is happening. The guy screams and clutches a bleeding sharp object in his hand. The guy screams that this is disgusting. Han Feng explains that the meat reacted to the red light, but to the touch it felt like it was just cooked. He says the red light just warms up. Han Feng explains that things are more complicated. He notices that it seems to be falling apart. Han Feng is surprised that here it is. The guy grabs a handful of grains. He explains that the green light signifies the evolution of matter, and the red light signifies its decay. The man says that if you combine them, he screams, there is more meat now. The beans have disappeared somewhere and he asks if they have merged with the meat. Han Feng says the meat is amazing, it looks, feels and smells like the real thing, even better than the real thing. He will do it again. He screams that he can't do anything. Han Feng says the principle still needs to be understood. He says the day was productive. He says that if he can fully grasp this power, he will be on top of the world after the end of the world and laughs. Han Feng says that's great. One meal will not be enough for him and he has no means of self-defense. Han Feng says we need to find the cannon before the apocalypse starts. He is surprised while holding a box of vegetables. It has begun. The cold has come. Han Feng says that the temperature will drop to -45 within a week and he needs a gun as soon as possible. And also explains that buying weapons is prohibited and he has no connections to get one. He says that he is now busy with business and there are millions in each project. He says he knows Lao Wang from Shigonglita calls him her little brother, and the man explains that he knows him. He says his bro slipped him a cigarette. The text explains that the clothing style is called Doro Hobahato. The text says that everyone calls him Joe. The guy says there's no need to be shy, he doesn't want to smoke alone, and calls himself Homeless Joe. Joe says he's always up to something and everyone here knows him. Joe offers Han Feng a cigarette, asking if he'll smoke one. Han Feng explains that he only smokes Huazi, and that anything else makes him cough. The guy asks what's new, and Han Feng explains that his brother has a little project he's helping him with, and they'll soon be going to the sauna together. Joe says he's sorted out that deal and they'll soon have 20 million. The man asks if this is another deal for 10. The guy with the cigarette says he might have the right connections. Han Feng stands silently with his hands in his pockets. The man on the left smiles. The man says he hasn't seen him for a long time, and then gets surprised. He laughs and waves his hand. The guy with the backpack says he knows another guy. The guy says it's him, Han Feng, and they met recently, asking if the other has forgotten. The man replies that he's too busy and has completely forgotten what he wanted. Han Feng explains that he can't speak, and the man with the cigarette is surprised. Han Feng says that this is how it is, and the blonde man with the cigarette thought about it. The guy shouts that he doesn't understand why this is necessary, and Han Feng explains that he felt ashamed and starts saying well. The guy with blonde hair says that they are not involved in any illegal dealings and that the issue with the guns is serious, and he has connections but it is better not to get involved in this business. He listens. The guy says he got it all wrong. Han Feng explains that he is in a situation where he needs a weapon for self-defense. The guy says he was recently riding his bike to work and an old man who kept spitting past him. The man explains that something hit him right in the face. The guy says he asked the man why he did it and what he thought would happen next, after which the man spat again. The guy says he gave him a good beating. The guy explains that he said he'd regret it. The man with the bicycle turns back and raises his fist. The voiceover says that the next day his friends caught him near work and beat him up 5 times. The guy says it was such a humiliation, that's why he needs a gun. The guy yells that he spat on someone else and calls him a freak, explaining that it's not right to behave like that in public. Han Feng stands and listens. He says he doesn't think he quite understands the story. The man says no more, bro. The guy with golden hair says that he will do everything in the best possible way and will call his boss right now, and Han Feng thanks him. The guy explains that they'll take the bus because his Panamera is being repaired. The guy with the backpack says it's on wheels. Han Feng presses the button on his car key fob. The man says the guy is living well and asks how much the car cost. He explains that it cost 700,000. The man says that's pretty good. The guy explains that you need to turn left at the next intersection. The man explains that he can't get used to his new SUV and calls himself the most handsome and sexy. A guy says it was still summer last night, and another guy says the weather was amazing. A man in glasses asks who it is. A man in a yellow sweatshirt with a cigarette and a man with a cigarette and a chain are sitting by the fire. A man in a blue shirt is sitting, looking at his phone. The guy with the backpack says he wants to meet Lou's boss and has some business to attend to, and the man asks if he has a light. The man in the light jacket says it's Lao Li and asks why he came. The guy in the yellow sweatshirt says it's a new Tiger and asks how much it cost, and the guy with the cigarette explains that it wasn't very much, 700 grand. The guy says he's showing off, even though the owner of the car is standing right next to him, and calls it impudent. The tattooed man says he's got no tongue and asks why they came at such a time. The guy asks Lou, the boss, for a cigarette, and the man next to him explains that he's busy. The guy says that his brother wants to buy something and he needs a gun. The man says the word gun. The man smokes and exhales smoke. The guy is silent. The man says he thought they would bring him something interesting. The man speaks to Jang. The man explains that the amount is 6,000. Han Feng says he'd like something longer. The man is smoking, and the boy is standing with his hands in his pockets. He says that with a sight. The man says boy. Han Feng explains that he is tense. The man shouts that he needs a sniper rifle and asks if the man is crazy, explains that he is in a store and should understand what he is asking for, and demands either a gun or for him to leave. The guy explains that it all started 5 years ago when his wife, and the man says that this is the situation. There is heavy snowfall outside. The building is covered in ice and snow, and a sign with the letter N and a neon sign saying open are lit on it. The man shouts that fate is so bad and that the 3 children are not his, and the guy says that's exactly it, boss. Han Feng says Lee is a master of invention, and sometimes he feels like he goes too far. The man says that let it be a sniper rifle, everything will be done, but it will be necessary to wait a couple of days. He thanks the boss. The guy with the cigarette says he told you so. The man orders Zhang Zi to organize and try to find a semi-automatic, and also not to forget about the ammunition. The man with the phone confirms that he understood. The man says and explains that it is a gift and offers to take it. The guy is silent. A man says boss, and a man asks a question. Han Feng says his friend works with the government and has received information that due to changes in the weather, there will soon be a shortage of everything. So he advises stocking up. The man says he understands. The guy says they're leaving, and the other one yells that the sight of Lee pisses him off and demands he get out. The guy says he promised to solve everything and calls himself a handsome man, asking for confirmation. Another guy explains that the boss was in a good mood and, if he'd asked, he would have gotten a cannon that fires cannonballs. The first guy thanks Lee and says he has cigarettes. The guy says he just loves helping people, but if they insist, he'll cough up everyone except Hua Zi. The man explains that he doesn't need much, 7 or 8 blocks, and when he gets paid for one job, he takes the guy to the sauna. Han Feng says that he has supplies and weapons and he will definitely last for some time. Now he needs to devote time to his abilities, explaining that if he can solve the food issue, the chances of survival will skyrocket. A powerful explosion or impact occurs, accompanied by a strong wave and dust emission. The boy screams as he falls backwards, and the man looks at him in surprise. The guy screams about how he is. Han Feng says his leg hurts and he screams. The guy says he apparently broke something. The guy asks Lee to take him to the hospital. The guy explains that he doesn't have a license and says that you can't drive without one. The black-haired boy is silent, and the blonde-haired man tells him to lean on him and shouts that they'll get home quickly. The man repeats the count of Atva. The guy says he'll see Jion and wishes her luck on the night shift, and the girl wishes her a nice trip. The girl says the snowstorm is getting worse. The telephone rings. A voice on the phone tells the head nurse to come to the main hall because there aren't enough people, and the head nurse replies that she's already running. The doctor explains that the man has a fracture of the right tibia and asks him to wait outside, promising to give him medicine. Han Feng is silent, holding a picture of his leg, and the man asks him how he feels. The guy says he'll go and needs to cough up some more stuff so they can call if anything happens. He says okay and let's go. Due to a sudden cold snap and a severe snowstorm, the number of accidents increased and the entire emergency room was filled with victims. Han Feng says when will they give the medicine? He says The nurse asks head nurse Jean to examine the wound after cleaning it, and head nurse Jean agrees. Head nurse Jean explains that once the patient's condition stabilizes, they'll give him a glucose injection in 10 minutes, and if there's a heartbeat, a boy is happily playing with a teddy bear, and a nurse is laughing. The boy comments on how talented she is and how well she treats her patients. The girl is surprised that she is still beautiful. The guy is surprised that she is very beautiful. Han Feng is surprised that this is not possible. The man says it's the head nurse. He's surprised. The girl says she is running. A man explains that he's suddenly experiencing pain in his side, which is getting worse, and asks what could be causing it. The nurse says everyone's busy right now and suggests they wait, then explains that they need an X-ray. The man says he will examine him, and Han Feng explains to direct him. The man says it's right here. The girl is surprised. The girl asks for forgiveness and explains that the attending physician will come soon and examine her. The woman says she hasn't gotten to the best part yet. The man grabs her by the hip. There's a loud crash. The man screams, and the girl asks if he's okay. Han Feng explains that this is his first time using crutches and he hasn't learned how yet. A man asks if his phone is broken, and another man yells at him not to touch it. The man says the guy quickly gave it away. Han Feng says indeed. He says that we need to leave here as quickly as possible if we don't want the security to kick us out. The man is silent. Han Feng says he can't return the phone and warns that if he sees it being used improperly, he will expose it and leak it online. The man is silent. The guy says wait. The woman screams at him. The man runs away. The girl says that his side didn't hurt and he ran away so quickly. And Han Feng can't believe his eyes and wonders how she can be so naive. He says that this pervert just took a picture of a girl under her skirt, and the girl is surprised that she didn't realize it right away. Han Feng says it's up to the person to keep it, delete it, or take it to the police, and explains to be more careful in the future because there are plenty of perverts these days. The girl asks, confirming that the man's leg is injured. The man is surprised. He says that it needs to be done like this. The nurse says it's ready and it doesn't hurt that much, and the guy thanks her and explains that it doesn't hurt at all. The nurse says she should be grateful and won't let the bad guys get away with it anymore. And Han Feng explains that they need to be careful in the future. A man asks the head nurse to come over, and the girl agrees. He is sitting on a bench with a bandaged leg. The nurse tells him to remember to come back in a week to change the bandage, and Han Feng agrees. He is surprised that in a week. The nurse says, well, goodbye then, and the man leaves on crutches. The next day, a woman reports that the morning news is breaking and heavy snowfall and a sharp cold snap are expected in all regions of the country within 24 hours. According to international journalists, sharp temperature fluctuations are being observed around the world. Russian experts, along with experts from 46 other countries, are attending a UN meeting to discuss the cause of this weather. Experts said the unusually cold snap will not last long, but urged viewers to pay attention to safety precautions and disaster warnings. The guy tells people not to panic, not to believe or spread rumors, and also explains that this disaster will soon pass. Han Feng says that the bigwigs always hide the true state of affairs and use false information to pacify the masses, and explains that if he had not died one day, he would have believed it too. The guy says that this time he stocked up on supplies in advance and explains that the house is protected and the heating equipment is ready. Han Feng says that he is well prepared, so there is no need to worry, and the sound of glasses clinking sounds. Lu Yang says there's more and more snow, and she's sure it's already around -15 degrees. Su says he just received a notice from his employer that they're working from home due to heavy snowfall. Jin Taiyang says he went out and the snow was almost calf-deep, and that it's frozen. People ask to listen, explaining that the heavy snowfall is caused not by bad weather, but by the Earth's interior, and warn that this is no ordinary blizzard. An ice age is coming soon. Lu Yen says the snow is getting heavier, and it's already around -15 degrees. The man is surprised. The guy asks who he is and wonders how he knows about the end of the world. Han Feng says that this outcast needs to be paid attention to and explains that this is not an ordinary snowstorm. An ice age is coming soon. He says that if you're going to brag, they're the first. He clicks on the phone. A man notices an incoming call on his phone. The man says he needs to go to the supermarket and buy more food before coming in, and he waits. The girl is surprised and says, A girl smiles and looks forward while sitting on a bed with her legs tucked up. Han Feng says that even in this weather he is tempted by practically nakedness, and explains that the task will cost him a lot of money. The man says that he needs to think about what to answer, and the other man explains that this is definitely true. The woman says that the bastard Han Feng should wait with her. Today is the third day of the apocalypse, the temperature outside is -20 degrees, and the heating system is working for the first few days. Even the internet is working, everyday life continues, and people are forced to watch videos to pass the time. Han Feng says it's only the third day and he's already so bored, and explains that the biggest problem during the apocalypse is loneliness. He explains that his leg is also far from being in the best condition, and it will take several months to fully recover from the injury. The man says he'll continue watching the videos. The screen announces that today's science section will discuss whether there really are people in the world capable of regeneration. Han Feng explains that after doctors stitched up the wounds of a man who jumped from the 15th floor, they discovered that his internal organs and bones had begun to recover. He explains that whether this is true or not will be revealed in the next video. He says that, for sure, Han Feng wonders how he didn't think of it. The hand is surrounded by green flames. A guy with black hair puts his hands on his injured leg, which is wrapped in bandages, and a green glow appears around his hands. The boy screams that his leg hurts and explains that he can't walk. Han Feng says that he seems to have imagined that green light can heal wounds. He screams and explains that he is in trouble. The goat makes a noise. Han Feng screams. Han Feng says his sheep are going for a walk. The guy is screaming. A boy shouts and drives a flock of sheep forward, waving a whip. The goat jumps up and the guy flies through the air in surprise. There is a crunching sound underfoot. The boy screams and trembles, lying on the ground in front of the wolf. A goat licks a man's leg. The guy screams and pushes away the animal, which sticks out its tongue. A hand slaps the head of an irritated animal, which sticks out its tongue. The tongue wraps around the leg, squeezing it. A boy screams when he is hit by an animal's tail. A hand clutches a leg surrounded by green flames. Han Feng screams. He screams, "What a bad dream this is." Han Feng is surprised. He says his leg is burning and he can't get up. Han Feng says his leg seems to be fine. The guy says maybe the green light healed her while he was sleeping. Han Feng says he will check. The man says he feels sick. Han Feng is surprised to see blood on his finger. A man says his finger is cut and green flames are appearing around his hand. A group of men count out loud while lifting and dropping snowballs. The man thanks him for his work, and Han Feng thanks Uncle Luo for helping him on such a difficult snowy day. Luo Guangyao says that they are all brothers from the Wang family. The two boys are surprised. Wang Xiaowen explains that he is saying hello, and Wang Xiaowu says that he is saying hello too. A guy with a shovel is surprised when another guy steps in a puddle. The man explains that the ground is frozen and asks them to be careful, asking if they are hurt. The woman says she's fine and thanks her. Jin Shui holds her hand. The man says they're going to clear the main road and if you need help, call them. The girl says to go, she can handle it. Han Feng says that the snowfall is getting heavier and heavier and they need to hurry if they want to go shopping. The woman agrees. The man says he remembered something about his purchases. Han Feng asks what's wrong. Uncle Luo explains that it's not that important. A man says he recently heard about a neighbor who transports a lot of stuff in his pickup truck every day. The man explains that maybe he just recently moved in and is furnishing the apartment, and Han Feng says that isn't that a common thing? The man explains that he saw gas cylinders and a fireplace, and that this does not look like a normal move. The man says it looks more like preparation for the apocalypse. The guy reports that the main road is clear and they can leave, turning to brother Jang and Uncle Luo. The man, smoking a cigarette, says the guys are great. The man asks what they are whispering about and explains that preparing for the apocalypse sounds interesting. A boy throws a snowball at a man, who reacts with fear to the impact. A man with a cigarette in his mouth watches the scene unfold. Luo Yen says Chuanyu has had enough of slacking off and should get to work. The man yells that he does all the work and advises her to take a closer look at herself. The girl says not to point fingers. A man asks two people to stop arguing, explaining that the main road is cleared. The guy shouts, "Finally!" The girl says the boys can rest for now and get ready for the supermarket. A guy says that his family needs to buy a lot of things, and another guy explains that he came to his mom because they need supplies in their hometown. The man asks Han Feng if he thinks about this and if there is a connection with the current natural disaster. Han Feng is surprised. He says that it is cold today. The guy explains that he doesn't really care. The man explains that it's just a normal snowstorm and it will be over soon, and everyone's life is about to return to normal, so he doesn't think there's a connection between the two events. Han Feng says that even if the disaster doesn't end, isn't it good that someone has plenty of supplies in their home? The man laughs and says that the interlocutor is so young, but his brains are already boiling. A man asks people to form a line and not push each other, explaining that the snowstorm is getting worse and they should try to return within 3 hours. People walk down the street in the snowfall. Han Feng says he's off camera. Someone shouts, "Open the door quickly." He says he was sleeping. The guy says it's a semi-automatic and explains that this is exactly what he ordered. The guy with the cigarette says that Bro Lu sincerely thanks him for stocking up on supplies in advance. And Han Feng laughs and replies that you're welcome. The guy says oh, and he asks what's wrong. The guy explains that they cleared the road today to drive there, but it emptied out overnight, and Han Feng is surprised that the entire store emptied out overnight. He is surprised, asking if this is true. The guy with black hair says that it's fine, and the blonde guy explains that he's going and advises to dress warmer. Han Feng explains that he came home. He says that the entire supermarket was emptied overnight and asks how this is possible. The man says that in the comics and novels he used to read, only people with superpowers could do this, sucking everything into space. Han Feng is surprised that they actually exist and explains that it is alarming. He explains that he needs to study his abilities more carefully so that when he meets other people with powers, he can take countermeasures. Han Feng explains that it is currently known that its ability can react with various products. A hand takes a handful of grains from a bowl. Han Feng explains that the success rate is low. With soybeans it's only 1 in 10, and with meat it's even lower. He wonders why this is so. Han Feng screams as bright green energy erupts from his fist. The man thinks that the success rate is really negligible. The guy says he has to sort everything out today. The device screen displays the time 22:45 and the date July 25th. The guy screams that he really understands what's going on, while forcefully pulling out the plant by the roots. Han Feng explains that the energy of green light is not constant when used. It explains that all foods have different energy values. The energy fluctuation scale is explained, with marks from 1 to 5 seconds. The energy fluctuation scale shows the energy level rising sharply and going beyond acceptable limits. The man sits, leaning on his knees, looking down. When everything goes wrong, Han Feng fails. The guy says this scale looks familiar. The guy says it's an online music game that was popular about 10 years ago and screams. A hand clutches a small ball surrounded by green flames. It is said that then the values of energy input per second should be correct. Han Feng explains that the energy he uses isn't ordinary power, but a special form capable of altering reality. He explains that controlling this energy requires complete concentration and inner calm. A guy laughs while holding a plant that is surrounded by an energy vortex. Han Feng says that he has already eaten today and shows that he has a lot of food. The guy screams that the ink spilled and ruined the vegetables. Han Feng explains that the principle should be similar. A man holds a piece of food that glows with multicolored light and emits vibrations. Sequences of arrows appear above and below it, resembling commands or codes. The guy screams that he missed. The guy shouts that he missed and demands to repeat it. The guy screams that he wants more and throws a punch that misses. The guy screams that he missed and says, "Damn!" In the kitchen, a black liquid is leaking from the sink and oven, spreading across the floor and countertop. The guy shouts that there is silence. In the right panel, a hand touches a green stone, from which green sparks emanate. In the left panel, a hand touches a red stone, from which red sparks emanate. Han Feng shouts that now. He screams and delivers a powerful kick. He says, Han Feng says a way to synthesize meat has been found. Good morning, dear viewers, says the man. Today is July 18th, the 4th day of the snow disaster, and the whole country is experiencing this event with horror. Han Feng explains that all regions are actively fighting against the natural disaster and eliminating its consequences in order to make life easier for ordinary people. He explains that heavy snowfall has caused disruptions in traffic, electricity, and internet service across the country, and asks for patience while rescuers restore everything to normal. He also says that local authorities are actively delivering necessary resources to the affected areas. The TV presenter explains that they hope the man won't leave the house without a special reason. The man thinks that, just like in his past life, everything is starting to fail him little by little. The man stretches. A man reads a group message asking why he can't get through to apartment 1701 and is surprised. Han Feng is surprised that they're causing a stir in their conversation again. He explains that he's clicking on a message from the management company. He says that before his reincarnation he heard something about the war. The girl says that he is sick and why he doesn't ask others, and also explains that it is because she did not agree to go on a date with him then. Han Feng says the committee is reminiscent of the time before reincarnation. He says this is nothing more than a way to deceive those who donate food. On July 19th, the 5th day of the end of the world, the temperature outside dropped to -40 degrees Celsius. The heating system has been completely shut down due to extreme weather conditions, and everyone is looking for ways to stay warm and maintain body temperature. Han Feng says the situation is only getting worse, just like in her previous life. A man yells out why there are so many zombies, then screams and makes a sound. The man says the phone is ringing from an unknown number. Han Feng says hello, then explains that he's being asked if he's Mr. Han Feng from apartment 1801, and that a representative from the 8th house is planning to start clearing the road in 20 minutes, asking him to come to the underground parking lot after the cleanup to check in. Han Feng is indignant. He says that it is better not to quarrel with the neighbors for now. He wants to minimize the likelihood of the secrets of his apartment being revealed, however. The man is surprised that snow has almost completely covered the first floor. A man says that the road was cleared only yesterday. Another man explains that he has never seen so much snow in his life, and a third man says that you should at least try to open the door. The man with the shovel tells Han Feng to come to him, and Han Feng replies that he. The man says that they attack on 1, 2, 3. The guy shouts that it's 1, and the other guy shouts that it's 2. A guy shouts 3 and a group of men are surprised. The man says there's too much snow, the man says it's cold. The man says he can't open his eyes, the man says oh shit, the man screams. Han Feng says it's freezing cold and explains that going outside in this weather will sooner or later result in frostbite, and possibly even death. The man explains that if they go clearing the snow now, they will get frostbite and says that it will be difficult to remove so much snow, and also that only a fool would go out in such weather. The man says he will go. Han Feng is surprised by this voice. He says that, of course, you need to have strength and zeal, and the guy shouts that they are a bunch of weaklings. The guy explains that this is not a joke and suggests not to brag. The man says that they will wait until the snow stops. A man screams through a curtain of snow. The man in the blue jacket explains that the door is frozen and won't open, and the man in the brown jacket says they need to find another way out. A woman begs for help. A man and a woman are freezing. The guy screams and laughs. A guy asks a man how he feels. Han Feng tells the boys to go to the parking lot and find the leader to mark him, and the man explains that they will first wait until the snow stops and then think about it. The guy says that there is no way we can remove this snow by hand now. A man walks toward a door in Area C on the first floor. The man explains that there is a lot of snow now and it will be cleared when the weather gets better, and the underground parking lot will be designated as a donation and food distribution site. Han Feng is surprised, asking if this is the Jang from the conversation. He says that he is the one who heads the deception committee. The man says thank you again for your concern. The man says he really didn't expect so many residents to be willing to donate their supplies, and explains that their generosity has helped a lot of people in need, for which he would like to thank everyone on their behalf. Han Feng explains that this is a common thing and they should help each other in difficult times. The woman says she believes that only by uniting can they survive this crisis. The man explains this. Han Feng says that the disaster will not end and they will regret it 100 times. The guy says he's going upstairs, and he explains that it's good. Han Feng is surprised. He says it's that same nurse. The girl apologizes and asks to let her through, and then asks for directions. The girl screams that she dropped the boxes. Han Feng asks how she feels, and the girl replies that she is having a hard time. The girl is surprised that it is him and thanks him. The girl is surprised that he has a leg. Han Feng is surprised that the wound healed so quickly. The guy explains that he's had good regeneration since childhood, and ordinary bruises heal in a couple of days. The girl explains that it's just like that. The girl says it's great. The girl explains that everything is fine because the boxes are too heavy. Han Feng says he will help, and he is strong, and asks her to consider this as thanks for the bandage. A boy screams and breathes heavily while holding a box of books. The guy asks if he can find out what the girl has in the boxes, and the girl explains that the boxes just contain some medications for donation. The girl says that if it's heavy, she can carry it herself. Han Feng says it's a piece of cake. The girl says she's much stronger than most guys. He asks if that's true and if she has any innate strength. The girl explains that she has her own reasons. Han Feng is surprised. The girl apologizes and explains that if something were to happen, she herself would not be able to explain it. The girl says she still doesn't know Han Feng's name. Han Feng says Han Feng. The girl says that her name is Jin Shui and it's nice to meet you. Han Feng says oh. The girl asks Han Feng what he does for a living and is surprised to hear that he is a slacker, after which Han Feng explains that he is a slacker, and the girl explains that there is nothing surprising about slackers. A girl is surprised when a man pokes her in the shoulder and says he's on his way. The girl screams that she is in pain, and Han Feng says that he has a box. He is surprised to feel a touch on his chest. The girl apologizes. The man Han Feng says that nothing. The girl tells Han Feng that she is surprised why he didn't tell her that he would be here too. The girl asks who it is and if he is her friend. The guy in the suit with ears says he won't interfere and thanks him for his help. The man replies that it's okay. The woman asks why Huna came, and Han Feng explains that she came for supplies and says that he hasn't written to her, which makes her even worried that something has happened to him. The guy explains that he was just about to write, and the girl says that she saw him chatting and laughing with that girl and asks him not to lie. The girl asks Han Feng if he has any extra food at home and explains that she is almost out of food, so she asks him to share. Han Feng says he's laughing. He says that he doesn't have much food either, but he can lend her some, and reminds her that the girl didn't respond to his message, and then invites her to stay with him for a couple of days. The girl is surprised, asking The man is silent. The girl explains that she didn't quite understand what he meant at the time, and says that if he wants to talk, he can write to her anytime. The guy says it's a refusal and then he'll go. The girl is surprised. The guy says wait, holding the other man's hand. The girl says she feels like the guy has changed a lot, and the guy explains that he takes relationships extremely seriously. The girl says she doesn't want others to think she's only with him for supplies and asks him to give her some time. Han Feng says Huna. He says that if he hadn't died then, he might have believed it and that he really wants to rip off this ugly mask and also that he just found that guy. Han Feng says he'll just act the same as before his reincarnation and wait for Huna to bring him herself, and then he wonders why he should bother looking for her himself. Han Feng explains he was joking. The girl is surprised when she pronounces the sound A. Han Feng says he will wait for an answer and bring food tomorrow, and the girl explains that he is the best. The woman says she's going to go and will write later, and the man tells her to be careful and not catch a cold. The guy says that he has already eaten today. Han Feng says Li Huna asks Han Feng what he's doing, reminding him that he said he'd bring food 2 days ago, and wonders why he's not answering. The phone rings. The man uses chopsticks to pick up a piece of meat from a bowl of rice. Han Feng explains that in such weather one should only eat hot food. He explains that meat cannot increase continuously. Han Feng explains that meat can be processed infinitely, just like soybeans. The man says that before he used to eat half of the sprouts and process the other half, and he tried to do the same with meat. A knife is shown cutting a piece of meat, after which a small object is added to one of the pieces, resulting in a whole piece of meat. Han Feng explains that he repeated this with another piece using the same principle, but the result remained the same. The knife is again shown cutting meat. He says that he experimented again and again, but nothing changed as he expected, and now he won't have to worry about the food running out sooner or later. The man says it's August 2nd, the 19th day of the disaster, and explains that he's on Pajuhaiti Island in the Maldives, 78 kilometers from the equator. He reports that the temperature there has dropped to -42 degrees Celsius. The entire island is covered in ice and snow, and the ocean is freezing at an unimaginable rate. Experts have determined that the maximum thickness of the ice has reached 55 centimeters, and the current situation in countries located closest to the equator is almost the same as in our homeland. The guy says that in reality everything is much worse than what the media says. The boy screams as he notices his hand is covered in blood. Han Feng says that this is the 7th explosion and asks what is going on there. The guy is surprised and says that there are a lot of helicopters. Han Feng says his beloved neighbors are also panicking. The man explains that residents exchange various items and food in the underground parking lot. Several people hand each other items for exchange. The man explains that many took advantage of the opportunity and began to extort money, which caused many fights. A woman explains that the council has said that those in need must now line up to receive supplies. It is noted that this is the underground parking of the 6th building, the 2nd block. A man sneezes. The guy says he's a real cold guy. A man explains that without the necessary information he would never have come down here. Another man shouts that you can't cut in line, and a third man asks who is cutting in here. The guy walks with his hands in his pockets. Han Feng says he remembers a riot occurring before his reincarnation, but the specific reason is never revealed. It's better to find out the situation now in order to minimize risks in the future. Han Feng says there are so many beggars. The man asks why, with so many huge boxes, he is only given this amount of money, and the woman explains that everything is divided equally. The man demands the return of the supplies he donated, and Han Feng explains that the goods are non-returnable. The man explains that the disaster is in full swing and hopes the other person will be understanding, promising to return everything double when this is over. The man says he doesn't know how long the cold weather will last and needs the other person's donations. The man says that brother Jang said he would return everything later, and the woman explains that he should show respect and thinks that the man just wants to get more than his share. The guy says not to hold up and get going. The man explains that everyone here is in line. The man says that everyone on the committee is working hard and asks if that's clear. The man shouts that whoever donated shouldn't ask for it back now. The man shouts at the fat man to go away. Han Feng says it's impossible to return donations. The guy in the hood explains that putting yourself on the moral high ground and blaming people for giving more than they receive is simply shameful. The man says he has never seen such shameless people. Han Feng is surprised. The guy says it's a bro. Han Feng says he hasn't seen him for a long time and asks how he's been doing lately, and the man explains that he's doing well. He says that he just fell apart, and the man explains that he calls it not bad. Han Feng asks if he has any supplies left, and the man explains that he drinks water to relieve his hunger. The guy explains that he thought he'd help and donated most of it to the committee, but in the end there was no food left at all, and the blizzard wasn't going anywhere. The man says that the committee's supplies won't last long, and Han Feng explains that if he had known, he would have kept more for himself. The guy shouts that he is a brother. Han Feng asks for a favor, explaining it briefly, and the man agrees. The man is surprised. The guy is surprised that he is given 4 instant noodles and 2 sausages for free, and the man explains that he doesn't have much in stock. The boy thanks Han Feng for not abandoning him in the cold and hunger, and says he will never forget his kindness. Han Feng asks him to stop. He tells him not to worry and that he will take care of everything, and the man thanks him and asks him to come later for food. The guy with the white scarf says he'll wait in line for supplies and gives a thumbs up. Han Feng returns the gesture. He says it's just a few packets of instant noodles and a couple of sausages, and he won't have to personally sniff out information. Han Feng says it's a bit of a shame to send his brother there, but lying at home on the couch, eating delicious food and playing is much better. The guy shouts at Han Feng. The guy in the red jacket shouts that he can't forgive so easily and punches Han Feng in the face. The girl says he violated her trust. The girl shouts at Han Feng, asking why he doesn't answer her. Han Feng says he is surprised that he was just hit. Han Feng says that he hasn't yet settled accounts with her for the past and is surprised that she slapped him again. He says that it is not so easy to manage. The girl says that he is deaf or dumb and did not hear what she said. Han Feng apologizes to Hui Yi and explains that the matter is that he says he left the supplies by the door and came back for the keys, and when he came out, he discovered the food was gone, and explains that he looked for it but found nothing. The girl asks if he looked for it. The guy says then he asks if the interlocutor has any more food. Han Feng explains that if you leave 1 meal a day, it will only last for a couple of days. The girl says it's great. The girl says that if they eat once every 2 days, that will be enough, and that way they can survive this disaster together. Han Feng says that the man has no shame or conscience, and explains that he says this with such ease, and also says that for her he is just a tool that can be used if necessary. The guy says okay. Han Feng says he finally promised to give her half. The girl thanks Han Feng and asks if he can give her the whole thing now. Han Feng explains he'll do it tonight and right after cleaning. The guy says he'll go and advises not to delay so as not to catch a cold. And the girl replies that she'll wait. Han Feng says he'll see you tonight. It's snowing heavily outside. The guy tells Han Feng he can come over now, asks how his food is, explains that he's already at Han Feng's house and is waiting downstairs, and then asks if Han Feng will come down because it's cold. The guy explains what Han Feng is doing anyway. The girl is surprised that he doesn't answer his messages or calls, and says that he won't leave her again, but she notices that he is very cold. The girl says that the elevator is not working either. The girl is silent. The guy screams that it's Han Feng's damn thing and explains that if it weren't for the supplies, he would never have gone to him. The girl says that she was overcome by extreme fatigue and for the last few days she has not eaten anything at all, while breathing heavily. The girl says she's almost there. The girl says the power went out. The girl asks who is there. A girl screams as a large black bag falls on her. The guy shouts at Han Feng. The guy explains that he fell asleep and immediately ran to his girlfriend after seeing the message. But then the lights suddenly went out. He hit the railing and couldn't hold on to the bag of flour. The girl screams that he can't do anything right. The girl screams that it is disgusting and coughs, trying to clear the liquid from her face. Han Feng says that this is actually how he planned it. The girl explains something, clenching her gloved hand. The guy says he brought groceries, and the girl asks what it is. The guy says they're spoiled, they're moldy, and they look like garbage. The girl explains that it is disgusting and asks how anyone can eat it, and Han Feng says that he saved it and that is all he has. The guy says to give it back then, since the girl doesn't need it. The girl wonders who said it's not necessary. The man looks at her silently. The girl says this is the very goddess he once courted with all his might. She explains that the mold is only on the surface, and that the inside should still be edible, and says that simply cutting it is enough to eat it. The girl says to give the flour here. The man extends his hand to the girl. The girl says there's still half left. Han Feng smiles silently. He explains that the waste there is so bad that you're guaranteed to have diarrhea for days. A girl is standing on the stairs with bags. Han Feng says that in the current weather there is no way to take a shower, so you will have to walk in flour. A guy walks down the stairs, humming. A man shouts to stop. Han Feng remains silent. The guy is screaming. A shadow is reflected on the floor, making a sound. A man grabs another man by the clothes and yanks him sharply. Han Feng shouts that he is tired of living, and then gets surprised and says, "Ah!" When he notices a girl breathing heavily, he says he was following a man, and the man asks for what purpose. The girl is breathing heavily while lying on the ground. Han Feng is surprised that he will remain silent. The guy says that if he doesn't tell, he'll undress someone else. The woman is silent. Han Feng is silent. The man says he will let the girl go this time. Han Feng says to go home and stop hanging around here. He says he doesn't understand. Han Feng grabs the man by the sleeve and he is surprised, asking what. The girl tells him not to look at her like that and explains that if the person he is talking to is not going to say anything, she will leave. A man points with his index finger. Han Feng says she wants him to go with her and he agrees. The door opens abruptly. Han Feng says that it is. He says that she has prepared everything and the girl confirms. The woman says she knew a disaster would happen, and Han Feng confirms it. The woman says the calculation is complete, and the result is an ice age. The man listens. Han Feng explains what she wrote in the conversation, and the man says that she is the marginalized person. He says it's cool and asks if she brought him to her house just to say that. The man touches Han Feng's shoulder with his finger. The guy says, Han Feng says it's the same. The guy explains that he's already eaten today and asks not to be disturbed. The men in uniform take the cylinders and leave. Han Feng says you. He is surprised that they were spying on him. The girl says yes. The guy is surprised. The guy asks the girl why she is undressing, and she explains that she is hot, after which the guy says that is not what he meant. The woman says to stop and put on pants. The girl explains that she can't stop working. Han Feng explains that he can't stop thinking about her. The woman confirms that she spied on the man because of suspicions about his supplies. The man explains that the main purpose of the surveillance was to confirm the likelihood of their cooperation. The woman agrees. The woman explains what cooperation means. Han Feng says this. He is surprised. The girl puts her hand on the sofa. The woman explains that the generator won't turn on, and Han Feng is surprised. A girl asks Han Feng to teach her how to use a generator, and he asks what exactly. The generator is running. Han Feng asks if she understands now, and the girl replies that she does. The guy says that's all then. The girl says, pointing her finger at Han Feng, who is surprised and sweating. Han Feng explains that there will now be hot water and the main thing is not to forget to close the tap after use. The girl says that she understands. The guy says raw meat should be unwrapped and stored in the freezer, calls the other guy a slob, and then asks him to stop staring and help. The girl agrees. The guy explains that it is essential to follow safety precautions when turning on the gas and asks her to watch and remember. The girl agrees. The girl explains that you need to check if it's ready, and if the flame is green, it is, and the guy explains that when there's enough gas, the flame will become strong and the food will start frying. The guy says he understands. Han Feng says eat while it's hot. He says he feels like he's been babysitting all day and explains that he's not very good at taking care of himself. The girl says Han Feng says he was joking. He says he's tired of it. Han Feng says he will eat right away and go home. He says the girl fell asleep right during the meal. A man covers a sleeping girl with a blanket. Han Feng explains that it is like raising a child. There is a sharp sound and the door opens abruptly. Han Feng says that someone is knocking on the door so early. He says it's for him. The guy thanks her and says it's so much. He asks if she wanted anything else. The girl asks to show it again and Han Feng agrees. He says that after spending a couple of days with the girl who lives next to him, he realized that she's a complete idiot and that there's no common sense in it. He explains that she really wants to learn everything necessary, since she drags him to her house every day asking for help. He's surprised that it's possible. Han Feng says he still doesn't know the name of his interlocutor. He says that he is the messenger of the true eye of the evil king. The guy tells her to forget about it. The girl eats, holding chopsticks and a bowl of rice. A man says he's trash and has no supplies, and another man tells him to get out of here. The man with the box explains that no one can prove that the supplies belong to someone else, while the man on the left says that they are his supplies. A man screams for his supplies to be returned. A man screams that he was first and demands to leave, while another man threatens to kill him. The guy yells at the man to leave because it's his food. The man responds with a sound of pain. The man says that maybe that's enough. Han Feng says it's absurd to fight over the last food supplies. A man explains that because of the donation idea, his family only received a pack of instant noodles a few days later, and says that the other man has the courage to say that. He shouts that if they don't fight, they will starve to death. A man explains that the food given out isn't enough and donations are running low, so they're fighting for the last supplies, and another man says that's kind of it. The man explains that this is simply ridiculous and asks if they deserve to die of starvation. The man says to think carefully about who caused them to end up in this situation, and the other man starts saying you. The man says that he allows himself to be reminded. The man explains that people with more stock sell bread, which originally cost pennies, for tens or even hundreds of yuan. The voice explains that at such an auction a loaf of bread is divided into 5 or even 10 parts. They eventually managed to make a fortune from the disaster. A man asks if a fight has begun for the last supplies. The man says that those who have the most supplies are not laughing because they are not making donations, but maliciously raising prices. The man says they will eventually die of starvation and asks if that is fair. The man says he doesn't think the most important thing now is to get up and get their supplies. The man says he's right and that it's very unfair, and Han Feng explains that they're starving while others are living in luxury. The man confirms this. The man with glasses says it's because of their enemies that they're like this. The man with the raised fist agrees, and the other man explains that they need to get their food back. The man with the bat says they'll take back what's theirs. A man screams. The man with the bat says he doesn't want to fight, and the man on the left explains that they don't intend to fight, but just want to talk. Han Feng is surprised and asks why they're so sure he won't fight back. The guy says these guys are just crazy and explains that something big is coming. Han Feng screams. He lies on the sofa with a book on his face and sleeps. Li Zi says that the people have gone crazy and are going to take all the supplies. He says that his brother needs to know this. He is surprised and asks who they are. The man says a man named Jang is inciting residents to steal other people's food, and that they go door to door, breaking locks. The man is surprised this is happening now. Han Feng says everyone is armed and advises them to hide if possible and not to fight them head-on. He explains that he will take care of himself and asks them to be careful. Han Feng says he didn't expect things to turn out this way and explains that he bought the guns. A man says he's afraid he'll be torn to pieces if crazy neighbors get to his supplies. Han Feng says we need to prepare. The guy yells that he is holding 2 fire extinguishers. On the table are scissors, a piece of aluminum foil, and some electrical tape next to a fire extinguisher. A man is wrapping 2 wires with electrical tape, holding them in his hands. The guy explains that this is a door leading to a room where things are stored and warns that there are a lot of boxes and a fire extinguisher there. Han Feng says that against the backdrop of a snow-covered city, tall buildings covered with frost and snow are visible. The guy says the power's out and suggests calling the administration, noting that the power's also out in the building across the street. He explains that the connection's also down and starts cursing. Han Feng explains that due to the snowstorm and the high consumption of electricity for heating, everything was bound to come to a standstill sooner or later. The guy explains that snow and low temperatures outside are making it difficult to repair the equipment. Han Feng explains that the power outage could be permanent. He explains that when residents realize they won't be able to call anyone else, they will panic. Han Feng says this could lead to more serious unrest. Half an hour ago, a girl was eating noodles with a fork. The guy explains that he wrote in the chat that he would buy all the consumables at 50 times the market price, and says that those fools bought it. The man says he spent more than 1.5 million yuan on all the supplies and also put some of his goods up for auction, and poor people rushed to buy them, thanks to which he made a good profit. The guy says the girl did the right thing by joining him. The girl says, aha, when the guy feeds her noodles and explains that as long as he has supplies, the girl will be completely at his disposal. The man asks if this is the right floor and explains that he remembers someone living here. The man explains that they'll open that apartment first and order him to drag the pallet here, and the guy asks what all the noise is about in the middle of the night. The man says it's already decided, he also believes it will be good, and explains that it will happen under the influence of the wind. Just knock down the door. The man screams. The man looks at the broken door. The man laughs. The generator is working. The guy is screaming. The guy wonders why there's still no power, then screams when an explosion occurs. Laughter and choking are heard. Han Feng says it's so complicated and explains that the electricity and internet have already been restored. Han Feng notices a knock on the door and asks what it is. He explains that this is a danger sign. Han Feng is surprised that the protruding strand of hair has shaken again and asks what happened to him again. The girl asks for help. Han Feng is surprised that evening comes when he is busy. He says he can't believe this happened and explains that he didn't expect such a turn of events. A man with closed eyes explains that the situation is more complicated than it seems and warns of impending danger. A dark figure with red eyes watches them silently. The man says, "Come in." Han Feng says that he heard the news that some residents started to break down the doors to get supplies, so he explains that it is better to run home because he will not open. The girl says that we need to wait. The girl sits on the floor near the closed door, clasping her hands and shaking. Han Feng says they can't let others get ahead of them. The guy asks how many residents there are on the 18th floor, and the other one explains that it doesn't matter and suggests going in one at a time. The man explains that it looks like no one has reached this floor yet, and Han Feng says that they have reached the right place. The man explains that the 2 apartments belong to them, and the other man says he understands. A man asks to give him a crowbar. The man says they came to pick up supplies, and the boy asks if anyone is home. The man holds the girl tightly by the mouth, and the sounds of breaking are heard all around. Han Feng says not to be afraid. The door is reinforced. The man holds the woman by the mouth. The doorknob turns sharply. The guy says that we should first tackle the neighboring apartment, and then explains that this door should be marked because even the handle doesn't break. The man asks if the other guy is hiding from debt collectors. Han Feng asks to add 5 centimeters of steel plate to the door and make the handle stronger, and the man thinks how good it is that he started strengthening the door and the handle back then. He explains that he was afraid that the neighbors would hear that there was someone in the apartment. The girl with glasses says thank you. Han Feng says it looks like they've left. He explains that he'll fix the device, and if they dare break down his door next time, they'll electrocute themselves to death. He asks what it is, and the man explains that it is a means of protection against electric shock. Han Feng says he doesn't understand why it's so hard to get this thing to work, and explains that this type of anti-theft device uses the difference between current and voltage, adding that it's all very simple. The guy is surprised. He explains that you first need to turn off the power and then wrap the exposed wire around the door handle to insulate it. Han Feng explains that you then need to connect the ground wire of the junction box to the handle, and the man explains that after that you need to turn the power back on. The guy is surprised that it actually worked. The girl explains that the evil king's true. I can see the truth about everything in the world. Han Feng says he doesn't understand how she knows this, and then asks her to forget about it. He says that if you need help, you need to speak faster because he is very busy. The guy says he's talking to him while holding a knife and a whisk, and the purple-haired man picks up and drops a lot of objects. The girl says that she will live here from now on, and Han Feng replies, "Oh." He shouts, "Stop, what?" Han Feng screams no and no again, and the man tells him to go home. He screams, "Oh," tripping over the wires. The guy screams that he is in pain. Han Feng says it hurts, then is surprised that the pain has stopped. He says and explains that it's his coffee table. Han Feng is surprised that he changed form. He is surprised by the purple light and explains that perhaps it was he who made the table that way. Han Feng says there is a toolbox too. The hand grips the hammer tightly. Han Feng says that it turns out that purple light can soften objects. The guy is surprised and says that he already forgot that she is here too. The man remains silent. The girl is silent. The woman says that The woman says she's also an envoy chosen by the evil king's true eye. Han Feng says, the girl is surprised and he says that he is also from the evil king, that is why this happens, and explains that it is very easy to deceive her, since she is very gullible. Han Feng explains that he can't help because he doesn't know how to do what needs to be done, and asks not to ask him. The man is surprised and asks why. He says that they are messengers and must support each other, share blood, and the man retells the story of sharing blood. Han Feng says that she is a girl and will live with him. The girl abruptly closes the door. The guy screams and suddenly opens the door. Han Feng says that he hasn't agreed yet and asks if they really think that this is the lair of the evil king, and then explains that he doesn't care and let him live. He wonders what that purple light was. Han Feng says he makes things soft. He says that he only has 2 types of light so far, and the rest have not yet been discovered. Han Feng explains that the purple color appeared when he tripped over a wire and was about to hit the table. He remembers how it was. Han Feng is surprised that someone appeared and says that it turns out that he appeared right after he remembered the dangerous situation. He is surprised that he reacts this way to provocation. Han Feng says he will check. He is surprised that it works even on steel. Han Feng says it's like jelly. The voice says that he tried again and again. Han Feng explains that the longer the purple light is used, the softer the object becomes, and says that there are no other changes. He says it's a useless effect. Han Feng says that he has already eaten, however. He says that if you mix 2 lights, a man touches a glowing purple substance that is surrounded by a green glow. Han Feng shouts, "Come on!" He is surprised. Han Feng says he's back in shape. He explains that he can't understand why the paper in the trash can look so strange. Han Feng explains that he can't stretch it out. The voice explains that mixing two types of light can change the strength of matter. Han Feng explains that the hardness is quite good. He says it's hardness. The man asks his brother if he is going to hand over the stolen supplies, and Han Feng explains that he himself has nothing to eat. The guy says he doesn't understand why he should hand over anything if everything will be given away to some women and old men, and the man explains that they need to keep it a secret, otherwise if anyone finds out it will be the end for them. A man yells at people to look back, and another man explains what the hell. The man is surprised that the wall is moving. The other man is silent. The image shows a large face with empty eye sockets and an open mouth, surrounded by red elements. A face with closed eyes appears. A masked man looks at this face and screams. The man says he is. The boy says he is. A man screams that he is a ghost. A man screams as another man runs down the stairs holding a bag and a package. The guy screams that he can't breathe anymore. The guy is screaming. The guy says it's too expensive to do something like that with an entire wall. The next panel shows a mixture of green and pink substances. A powerful explosion occurs with bright flashes and multicolored sparks. Han Feng says that he is very tired and then explains that now. The hammer strikes the surface, causing sparks. Han Feng says it's time to check the tempering result. He says he will start. Han Feng delivers a powerful blow to the surface. Buildings covered in ice and snow are shown against a backdrop of heavy snowfall. The guy is screaming. The guy says it's so hardened here that even a piece of the wall hasn't broken. On the ceiling you can see signs with the words, stairs and elevator, and torn pieces of paper or fabric fluttering around them. The package is placed on the surface. The man explains that many residents are almost out of food, and he was only just now able to gather supplies, sorry. The man writes down the information. The man is surprised. A guy screams that he is in pain while another guy pins him to the ground. The guy with the blue hat yells at the man to tell him where he hid all the stolen food. And the man explains that he didn't hide anything and it's all here. The guy says he just saw a man carrying 3 large bags but only bringing one back, and demands he stop pretending. The man explains that he's in pain and is mistaken, swearing it's all here. The guy yells that if he doesn't tell, they'll have to beat the answer out of him. Han Feng is surprised. The man turns to Han Feng and asks what he's doing here. The guy asks to let the other one go first and explains that if there are any questions they can just be discussed, and the other guy says that this man hid the food. The man says he knows and offers to deal with him himself. The guy says okay. The guy says that for Mr. Jia's sake he will let go of the man who falls and groans. The man screams that he can't take it anymore and explains that if he doesn't leave now, he will die. Han Feng asks if the man is okay, and the man explains that he is smiling. The image shows 2 garbage bags, one tied and the other filled with various packaging and products. The guy explains that there are 5 people in his family and there is not enough food, so the man says he's keeping it for today, and the other man is surprised and asks why. The man explains that rules are rules and they received a fixed amount of reward for giving what they could collect, and also understands that they are in a difficult situation. The man says to return the rest and thanks. The guy says that he will always carry out any order if something is needed, and the man explains that he can also contact him if necessary. The man says that those who have already received supplies should quickly go home. The man in the hat replies that it is good. The man in the jacket confirms this, and the other man says that he obeys. The guy asks how they forced him to give up the hidden food, and wonders how he agreed, and also why they decided to give him the rations. Han Feng says that he didn't actually do anything, he just had a sincere conversation with him, and the guy is surprised, asking about what. The man explains that the country's history has seen several riots and conflicts caused by clashes of interests between different classes. The guy explains that this is normal collective behavior and that if he breaks the rules, the group will judge him and consider him a criminal, and also says that if not caught, no thief. The guy explains that, not to mention the possibility of being legally detained after the disaster is over, he will continue to face reprisals from the robbed residents. The man says that's understandable. The guy says, here's how. The man on the pipe explains that he can't afford to lose his job, and Han Feng says that he's already eaten today. The man explains that among such rebels there is always a leader who directs their actions. The guy explains that in troubled times, heroes always emerge, and this guy is not so simple. The hammer hits the surface. A guy screams while swinging a hammer. Han Feng explains that the entire apartment is now fortified, and quite well. He says he hears a sound. The guy is surprised that others have come for his supplies. Han Feng shouts, "Who is there?" The girl says she is Han Feng and explains that she has been thinking a lot lately and has realized that she cannot suppress her feelings for him. Han Feng explains that only through adversity can one understand true love, and only the one who truly loves can sacrifice the last thing he has. And then he tells that if you don't believe, just open the door and touch his heart. He says it's the same thing she said back then. The guy is surprised that besides her, there is also that man behind the door. The guy says the moment has finally come when he'll finish off the two bastards right here. Han Feng explains that there is no light, the enemy is obviously hiding somewhere, and he will be in plain sight, and if he can't kill him with one blow, he can be counterattacked. He explains that if he hopes for an electric shock, they would need to touch the door handle at the same time, which is clearly impossible, and he is not sure of its effectiveness. The man says that he needs to calm down, he has finally waited for this moment, so it's better not to rush, and explains that he needs to think everything through first. Han Feng says that the biggest threat to him now is not Li Huina, but the man hiding in the dark. The guy explains that he can't just go out to determine the enemy's position and strike, and says that he needs to somehow figure this out in advance from the apartment. Han Feng is surprised. He says that he remembers he was hiding somewhere behind the door. Han Feng explains what should be in this area. He says it will take time, but it should work. The girl tells Han Feng that she wants to open the door and asks if he is still there, then repeats his name. The guy asks if this guy is worth being robbed, and the girl explains that he has food left and that she recently remembered that before the disaster he unloaded a truck with supplies at his place. The guy says that then their provisions will last for a long time. The man turns and screams. The man says he can't afford to be weak. The man asks if she heard anything, and the girl explains that she doesn't understand what the sound is. The man says it feels like someone is walking behind him. A man receives a powerful blow to the face. The girl is surprised. The man falls, bleeding. The guy asks if he's okay, and the man yells that he shouldn't be scared like that. The girl is surprised and says that the door opened. Han Feng screams and throws the fire extinguisher. The girl is surprised. The guy is screaming. The guy says don't joke like that. The guy is screaming. The guy is coughing. The guy wonders what's going on and the man asks for help. The guy is screaming. The boy screams that he can't let himself die and explains that if he dies, the girl will be alone. The girl is surprised and says she doesn't want him to die. The girl screams for help and runs away, and Han Feng watches her go. The girl falls, trying to catch herself, and Han Feng reaches out to her. The girl explains that she can't get up. The guy says she ran away so fast. The boy screams that he feels sick. Han Feng is surprised. A man shouts who gave permission to get up, and another man shouts. Han Feng asks him to wait, and the man laughs, holding his leg. The guy says that at least he knows who his father is and warns that if he is touched again, his father will deal with it. The man shouts that he doesn't care who the father is and explains that he is hitting this man, not his father. The guy says wait, and the man is surprised that he is a brother. The guy explains that he has no complaints against the other guy and asks why he. The guy shouts that he has to ask. A man screams that he is not worthy of living and asks why another man wanted to kill him, demanding an explanation. The guy shouts that he is responsible. The man says, "Ugh," and "Oh." A man lifts a bat. Han Feng says he can't die because he has a debt. The man explains that he can't die because he has a debt. The man says he wants to know why he is doing this and what his motives are. The man says the motives. The guy shouts that he should stop playing dumb. The guy screams that they are asking about his motives, although the interlocutor himself wanted to kill him. The guy is screaming. Han Feng screams. A man screams and another laughs. A man screams. Han Feng is surprised. The girl explains that she can't open the door because the keys are inside. He says he'll try to help. The guy says he needs help. Han Feng says that it was very cruel, but the girl was not even scared, and explains that she is a little alarming, so it is better not to let her live in his house. The girl explains that those people could return at any moment to take revenge, and if you stay here you'll be involved too. The man says this. Han Feng says she agrees. He says it's for his own good and suggests he live better at home. Han Feng says he wants to stay here. He says it's dangerous here and they could both die. The girl says there's no need to worry, because the evil king's true, I will help them. The man listens. The girl says she's tired and will go to sleep, and Han Feng asks what happened. He shouts to stop and says that it is enough to stupidly pretend and evade. He is talking about real problems. The guy grabs Han Feng by the shoulder, and Han Feng is surprised. The woman says to come here and he asks what. The guy turns the doorknob. Han Feng asks why. He is surprised that he cannot understand what is happening. The voice explains that those who have already received rations can go to their apartments and not take up space. The man explains that you can get food and clothing here, and the man explains that you need to sign up and wait your turn. The man says there are a lot of people right now, and the girl explains that you need to be patient. The man explains that everyone will be served in turn. The girl screams. The man in the hood is silent. The man with curly hair is silent. The man in the light scarf is silent. The man in the orange hat is silent. The man in the dark hat is silent. The man in dark clothes is silent. The man explains that apartment 601, building 4, last name Liu, 1 ration, and the man says that he is holding the ration for Mrs. Liu. A man says apartment 601, building 4, and another man explains that it was the girl from 601 just now. The girl in the red jacket is trembling, clutching a bag in her hands. The boy is surprised that he didn't answer her all night and asks why he passed out then. He explains that it was Han Feng's doing and asks if he set traps. The guy says that the moment that excites him most is when he finally opens the door. The guy explains that there was light in the apartment and warmth was coming from there, which means he obviously has something to generate electricity, and is surprised that he prepared in advance for this snow disaster, so he must have a lot of supplies. The guy says that he prepared secretly and didn't even say anything, and also gave away some unnecessary garbage and waste, and explains that it is necessary to find out about everything as soon as possible. The woman says, well, that's it. The man tells them to stand still. The girl in the red jacket turns around. The guy says it's their Huna. The man tells Huaina that they lit a fire in the hallway on the 5th floor and suggests they go warm up. The girl says it will warm up better at home. A man with a flashlight rustles a bag. The man asks her to wait and says he has plenty of food, inviting the girl to come and stay with him for a couple of days, and then explains that he has always liked her. The girl responds irritably. The girl screams that no one will want to accept his waste and drives the man away. Han Feng says the man with the shameless face took the supplies, thinking no one would notice, and that he would tell everyone she was pretending to donate the food. The man asks her to let him go because it hurts. The man explains that he is talking about this lady, and the girl says that he understood correctly. Someone simply took someone else's food. The girl screams to be left alone and stabs the man. The guy screams that he can't die because he has a daughter. The man shouts that she is a bitch. The man shouts stop. A boy yells that it's not okay to hurt girls. The man falls to the ground, screaming. The man asks what just happened, and Han Feng says that it looks like someone is in trouble. They say someone fell to the ground and ask for Mr. Jang, and also ask if it's a fight. The guy screams. The guy says he's fine and thanks her. The girl asks how she is, if she's hurt or if anything hurts. The girl says that this is her business card and if something suddenly hurts, you can come. The guy explains that he doesn't need it and thanks her. The girl listens. The girl screams that she's a damn bitch. The man tells her to keep her damn nose to herself and not stick it where it doesn't belong. The man shouts that he will kill and asks whether to believe or not. The man screams, oh, and turns around sharply. A guy screams and punches another man, knocking him down. The guy with the cigarette says that all his life he's believed that the most disgusting person is the one who beats women. The man on the ground says, ah! The guy shouts to make way. The man explains that it's Mr. Jang. The man says that they've arrived. The man tells Han Feng that the girl pretended to have a claim on the supplies, and he saw with his own eyes how she made a mistake with the rich man who raised the prices. The girl refuses. A guy with a white scarf shouts that a man who beats women has no right to complain here. The guy screams that he can't believe it, and Han Feng explains that he's not going to let go. He says the committee's job is to protect everyone and prevent people from starving to death. The man apologizes to Mr. Jang and admits he was wrong. The girl tells him to just walk past next time. The man in the white coat walks away silently, and the man in the blue jacket hangs his head. The man explains that the two of them suffered for nothing and asks what they think about his words about the committee, whether they would like to join. The boy says he's not interested in robberies and wouldn't join them even if he were starving. The man and woman listen to him. The girl apologizes to Mr. Jian and explains that she can't accept his approach, but is always willing to help others as a medical professional. The man thanks Mrs. Jean. Han Feng says he can't afford to relax. A girl asks if she can join them. A man with glasses turns to her. In the background, two people walk forward. The girl says that she always admired Mr. Isian, but there was no opportunity to tell him, and now everything is different. The man asks if the girl made a mistake and explains that the guy can fight, and the girl can heal, and what is she useful for. The man says that this girl has no value for them now, and the girl sighs. The man says he can't afford to relax. The guy tells Brother Jian that he knows where there are a lot of supplies. The man says the fan has blades and explains that there are triangular blades, square blades, and also a surveillance camera. Han Feng shouts to stop. The guy is surprised what she found. Han Feng explains that now. The guy says it's a mannequin and asks if it looks like what he described. The girl holds the mannequin's hand and explains intently that she's doing something with a blue light in her hand. Han Feng says oh and explains that this girl has the ability to store things in space. He says his house is already full of junk. The text explains that she can open a black hole and then suck everything she sees into it, but finding anything there isn't easy. Han Feng asks why they can't find anything inside, and wonders if it's a virtual space or if it transports things to other places. The girl explains that she's never explored it, but she's sure the space is vast. The girl says go ahead. He suggests sticking his head in there and seeing if he can find it. Han Feng says that if she sticks her hand in there, then everything should be fine. He says that if he can't get through this, he won't be able to become stronger. The guy screams. The girl creates a portal in her hand. Han Feng says look. He is surprised and covers his face with his hand, being in a whirlpool. The guy is surprised that it is so huge. Han Feng says that's who cleared out the entire supermarket in one night, and explains that it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. He is crying. The guy is screaming what the hell. The man screams, creating a glowing portal around his hand. Han Feng screams and then laughs, continuing to laugh as he kneels in front of the man in slippers. The guy screams that it feels like all the moisture has been sucked out of him and asks why they didn't warn him there was no oxygen there. The girl explains that she didn't go in there and her hands were fine. The girl says The woman explains that this is a portal through which one can get to another dimension. The guy shouts that finally. The guy says he found more. The guy screams that he doesn't know what's going on. Han Feng is surprised that this is. The man explains that these are the stairs to the 18th floor. The man explains that there is no elevator, and they are going up on foot. A man explains that there is a monster on the 18th floor and asks if they really want to go up, and another man says that they don't want to run into it. The man says it's the 21st century, and they believe in ghosts. He explains that Mr. Jang asked them to check because he trusts them. The man explains that they can't let Mr. Jang down. The man says that if that girl deceived Mr. Jang. The guy says they've arrived and is glad they decided to follow. The girl explains that there's no point in talking nonsense, because they weren't sent here for no reason, and suggests they finish quickly and come back. Han Feng says he's moving on to the second part of the plan. He'll start and then the girl will come out. The girl agrees. The girl says that the timing needs to be precise. He looks at the device in his hand. A man shows a stopwatch with a 2-minute mark. The guy asks if they heard anything. The man replies oh, and the other guy explains that maybe it was that ghost. 3 bright, glowing balls appear on the stairs. The cars are speeding along. The man is surprised that they are toy cars. A man watches a car take off with lit barrels attached to it. The lit fuses on the barrels are burning. There is a powerful explosion, accompanied by a scream. A man asks where they are. Another man explains it's paprika. A third man screams that his eyes hurt. The man is surprised. A flying machine with 4 balloons and a suspended container is shown. A burning fuse is shown. A man shouts that he needs to run. The image shows a flying drone with bright lights on its body turned on. Han Feng is surprised, asking, "Am I quitting?" The guy explains that they need to fly closer. He wants them to learn their lesson this time. The man shouts that he is here, and the boy shouts that he is here too. The guy yells, "Get lost," warning them to be careful, so the drone doesn't hit the person in the frame. The man yells, "Fuck you," and hits him with a crowbar. There is a loud banging sound. The woman explains that control of the left side has been lost and it's impossible to stabilize. Han Feng shouts that something needs to be done because this is their only drone. The sound of the impact is heard against the backdrop of falling snow and a destroyed wall. The timer shows 0:03. The man says to hold on. The guy explains, "Oh." Brightly colored fireworks explode over the city against the backdrop of falling snow. The woman explains that the right propeller has failed and they need to descend. Han Feng tells them to quickly find a place to land without crashing the drone. The guy says he found something outside the stairwell window. The guy says he's going to go get the drone because it's too important to them, and the girl explains that there's a dead body there. Han Feng says it's a corpse. The man remains silent. The guy says to enlarge the picture. The guy says it's Brother Lee. Han Feng says he is there. He is surprised that he was robbed too. Han Feng explains that he'll be back soon and that he has the key, so don't open the door for anyone. The man opens the door and starts looking for something. He explains that he can't open his jacket. Han Feng is surprised. The girl says it's to keep in touch, and the guy is surprised. The guy says thank you, passing the radio to his other hand. Han Feng hopes this thing won't be needed and loads his pistol with a click. He walks down the stairs with a flashlight in his hand. Han Feng says the 17th floor is clear, then explains that the 16th floor is clear, and then tells that the 15th floor is clear. He says that according to measurements taken from a drone, the temperature outside is minus 49.9 degrees, and explains that without any protective measures, a person would freeze to death within 30 minutes. The man says that the situation with Brother Lee is very bad and he needs to hurry. The man says that people need to be careful if they are going to go there. The guy with the flashlight explains that he understands and thanks you for your concern. The man says to give them 3 pieces of thick cloth first. The man says okay. The man at the table thanks Mr. Jang. Han Feng says it's his responsibility and that they will never treat people unfairly when it comes to donations. The men thank Han Feng and call him Mr. Jang. The girl asks the man if she can join them now, and the man says no. The man explains that, firstly, they cannot confirm that this is the work of the girl's friend, and secondly, if Uncle Lou had not personally seen someone moving resources, he would not have believed them at all. The guy says to inspect this floor together. The man explains to bring the tool for Miss Lee. The girl says okay, Mr. Jang, and the man orders to pack things immediately. The man explains that regardless of whether the information is real or false and whatever the purpose, during the upcoming operation he hopes that the woman will be able to demonstrate her value. The woman is surprised and says that the guy with the bat says he can't afford to be weak, and the girl in the red coat explains that they must stick together. The man in the raincoat explains that the most important thing now is to survive. The girl says she understands. The man remains silent. The man explains that each person is an important part of the team and asks everyone to take care of their own safety while climbing. The sounds of spitting can be heard on the stairs. A group of men are walking up the stairs. One of them says. The guy tells Han Feng to look at something. The guy shouts that it is Li Tzu. A man drinks from a bottle. A man screams and drinks from a bottle. The guy is screaming that it's hot. The man is surprised. Han Feng explains that he brought a thermos of hot drink, and the guy in the tasseled hat listens to him. The white-haired guy sits and looks at Han Feng. A guy with a bandage on his head says, "Teach, What bad luck! A man in glasses and a coat explains something, holding a thermos. The guy with the checkered hat tells Li Jin that Mr. Jang saved him, and he didn't even thank him. Li Jin coughs into his glove. The man says heh. Han Feng says that even if he wants to thank someone, it will be those from whom the man stole resources, and demands that he stop pretending to be a hero. The man says he will kill. The boy is surprised. The man angrily says that he's already said many times that he'll never join. Han Feng sincerely invites Brother Li to join them, explaining that they can only overcome the disaster if everyone works together. The guy with glasses and the guy in the bobble hat tell Li Zi to stop refusing and being so shameless. The guy with the scarf says he's trying to get him to join them. The man with glasses says that Brother Li has some kind of misunderstanding with them and explains that they just want him to share his power so that those who are weaker have a better chance of survival. The boy yells at Han Feng that he only gives the old people one meal every 3 days, and that it is no different from waiting for death. The guy explains that he doesn't have parents and the interlocutor's methods won't work on him. Han Feng says that once every 3 days, Zhang Shuya doesn't care much about them. The man explains that this makes sense because the committee wants to attract young people, so they accept the old, the weak, the sick, and the disabled, and warns that if this continues, conflicts will eventually arise within the committee administration. The guy yells that Li Jin doesn't appreciate their kindness and explains that if he doesn't join, he has to leave because they are tired of him bothering them. The man screams that he is screaming. The guy in the tasseled hat says he refuses to go and asks what the man in dark clothes plans to do about it. The guy in the tasseled hat groans. The man in glasses explains. The guy yells that he's watching, and the men back away. The guy is screaming. The guy in the hat and mask says he's not afraid, and the man with the bat explains they're not going to attack. Han Feng says he doesn't want to start a fight and suggests they settle things peacefully. A group of men with clubs approach a single man near a staircase. The guy says he's not afraid of the boys and encourages them to come up to him. Han Feng says that his brother's condition is bad and it seems like he will fall at any moment, so he should go help him. The guy explains that there are too many of them, and even if he goes, he won't be able to do anything. Han Feng says that Brother Li has saved him so many times that he can't just watch him risk his life. The image shows movement or vibration accompanied by sounds. The sound of a gunshot. Han Feng remains silent. The guy says he'll start if the others want to fight. A man screams. A shot is fired from a firearm. A flying metal pipe is depicted, accompanied by the sound of movement. The guy with the bat is screaming, and the guy in the hat and mask is saying "Woaha." The guy in the plaid hat is sitting on the floor. A guy in a mask says it's a gun. A man is surprised that it was a gunshot, and another man demands he stop joking and asks how that's possible. The guy is shouting that no one can move. The guy with the flashlight says that the little brother. Han Feng is silent. The man with the bandage on his face and the baton is silent. The man behind them is silent. The girl wonders why Han Feng left his home and where he got a gun. He explains that he has a pistol. A man with a bat stands in front of Han Feng. Han Feng says it's the key to his house, asks him to take it, and they'll slowly retreat. The man explains that it's okay. The guy with the mask and the baton says that they can take advantage of the opportunity while no one is paying attention to them, and the other guy with the mask and the baton asks Mr. Jang what they should do now. A man in a hooded cap and a baton is screaming. A man in a scarf and a baton is screaming. A man in a coat is silent. A man in a hat and a baton is screaming. A man with freckles and 2 braids is silent. A guy with black hair and yellow gloves tells you not to move and orders you to drop your weapon and kneel down. The guy in the hat with ear flaps says they can't just leave because this place is dangerous. The man in glasses explains that they need to figure out what's going on here first. The guy in the mask says he heard strange sounds and saw shadows. Another guy with a bat says they need to be prepared for. Han Feng says he will shoot anyone who moves, and the man calls for him to go. The man says that we need to remain silent. The man asks if anyone knows this guy. The guy in the red jacket says that this is Han Feng and the place they were going to is his home. The guy screams that she didn't tell them earlier that he had a gun, and the girl explains that she also sees it for the first time. The guy in the hat asks Mr. Jang, and Han Feng says to forget about it and that Miss Li won't lie to them. The man explains to think everything through carefully, and the girl says that even if he has such a weapon, doesn't he have any reserves? The guy shouts that it is true and explains that perhaps it is he who is raising prices. The man explains that in that case, the person Uncle Lu saw is most likely him. The girl asks Han Feng if they are still going with the original plan, and Han Feng explains that if he shoots them with a gun. The man explains that if he were capable of murder, he would do it right now, and says that he does not believe that they can hide in his house forever and not come out. The man says that they will return and prepare some security measures before returning. The man says they will clear 1804 as soon as possible. Han Feng says his hands are shaking, and the guy explains that it seems like no one is chasing them. The guy shouts that it's so warm. The man inserts the key into the lock. Han Feng says he's ready. The man yells at Han Feng to come in faster. The guy is surprised that it's a radiator. The guy is surprised that it's a generator. The guy says this room is full of supplies. The guy asks Han Feng what exactly is going on with his house, and Han Feng explains that it's a long story. A guy shouts that he hears a sound. A woman asks where the drone is. Han Feng says he forgot. The red-haired guy asks what kind of drone it is. The girl and he remain silent. The man says he understands. The blonde guy says that predicting this disaster is too cool, and Han Feng explains that even making such a big preparation is difficult and studying hard is really helpful. He explains that he was previously afraid that information about his reserves would leak, so he did not tell Brother Li the truth. The man places his chopsticks on the table and says he's grateful for the concern. Otherwise he would have starved to death, noting that he's being treated very kindly. Han Feng listens to him. The guy says Brother Li. Han Feng says that his brother has also been a great help and suggests that he continue eating because he has plenty of food here. And his brother quietly says, "Brother." He says he's such a good guy, but the woman remains silent. The blonde man says the situation in their complex is completely different now. The guy asks Han Feng if he remembers the information he sent before the power went out, and Han Feng says he does. A guy with the surname Jang goes around stealing supplies in the name of collectivism. He explains that there are those who follow him and there are those like him who disapprove of his actions. A guy with the surname Jiang said that after several people left the group, he didn't seem too bothered by it. The guy in the checkered hat explains that behind everyone's back, he sent Jean Qingwei to take care of them, explaining that it was done in order to reduce the threat to them. The guy explains that Jean Qinwen and Jean Qinwu are the older brother of those university twins. Han Feng says they studied so much that their intelligence returned to the womb. He says it's no wonder the committee grew so quickly with such underground tricks, and the man explains that this man is not easy to deal with. Han Feng says that evil will be repaid according to its merits and asks to guess who they tried to rob, and the man asks who exactly. The man shouts that his name is Li Zhenghao. The man explains that he is a boxer who was once a middleweight champion. The boy asks if the committee members were badly beaten. The man explains that they were, but Jiang refuses to admit defeat and lose face. The man explains that with his encouragement, these people continued to march towards Li Zhenghao to fight him. The man says that in the end, everyone was beaten by Li Zhenghao. The man says that because of this incident, Li Zhenghao also gathered a group of followers, among whom are two fairly well-known people. The blue-haired guy explains that one of them is named Zhang Yenny. He was a fan of Li Zhehe and had been involved in underground boxing for several years, becoming famous for his speed. The man says that the other man's name is Jin Zhongzai. He is an ardent admirer of Li Zhenghao, and it is said that he is endowed with divine power and his body is as strong as a monster's. The man says that with the authority of these two and Li Zhenghao, they have already become another faction in the area, and this group of people truly hates the hypocritical Jiang Shui. The guy with the white scarf says that Jiang was thinking about how to resolve the conflict and ultimately decided to rob the other guy's supplies. Han Feng explains that if that's true, then bringing him in was just a temporary scheme on Jiang's part. The guy with the white scarf explains that before he lost consciousness, he was planning to take. He says it's no wonder Jiang Shui wants to involve Brother Li, and explains that his group isn't doing very well. The guy with black hair asks what that sound was. A woman says someone has arrived. A man with black hair and a pink jacket looks at her intently. The next shot shows a group of people with backpacks standing by a closed door, one of them pointing at her. The guy says he'll electrify the door. The girl tugs at the guy's sleeve. The girl explains that she smells sulfur. Han Feng says MMM. He says sulfur, the guy screams that he fell, the girl screams that she fell, the guy screams that he fell. The guy shouts that he dares to use explosives against him. The guy with glasses explains that they have to use homemade explosives because they're not that powerful. Han Feng asks if he understands this. The man yells that it's a bunch of monsters. The guy in the blue jacket is surprised that this is the same thing. The man in the gray jacket with the backpack explains. The guy explains that the girl brought Jiang Shui here. The guy yells at Han Feng to move away from the door, and the man with the scarf is surprised. Han Feng presses the button. The guy is screaming. A man yells out what happened and another man explains that the door is electrical. The man in glasses is silent, looking at the body with sparking electrical discharges. The guy with the checkered hat says fine. Han Feng explains that they need to plant the explosives at the edge of the door where it meets the wall, and try using 2 packages this time. There are 2 explosive devices with activated indicators installed on the door. A powerful explosion occurs, releasing fire and debris. The door numbered 1804 opens suddenly, causing a crash and destruction around. The man informs Han Feng that it still remains intact. The man is silent. The man says there were definitely no problems with explosives and explains that this guy had prepared for defense in advance. The man explains that this time they need to use 3 packages of explosives together. He will show the place for the explosion, and if nothing happens, then they will continue to increase the amount of explosives used. The man says they must seize his house today. A guy with black hair and a guy with blonde hair are screaming. Han Feng and the man scream in pain as the barrel falls next to them. The guy asks the other guy if the explosions seem to be getting louder and louder, and the blonde explains that he can't hear him. The guy says he hears a strange sound and shouts, "Brother, brother." The guy screams that the wall is cracking. Han Feng says that they need to add more things to block their way. He says that if things continue like this, the cracks will become bigger and bigger. Han Feng says there's no point in blocking her and suggests they quickly clear out everything because he has an idea. The man asks how long it will take to move everything. The guy with blonde hair says he will do it and he and the girl listen. Han Feng explains that a small doll like her should quickly go back and hide in the bedroom, and the guy raises his hands. The girl explains that a glowing blue ball appears in her hands, and the guy shouts, "What the hell is this? And what is this?" A woman releases a bolt of energy that flies forward at high speed, while a man behind her watches what is happening. Han Feng says it's ready. The guy with the white scarf explains what's so scary and asks if it was all absorbed. The girl explains that it's impossible. He concentrates energy in his hands. The guy screams that he doesn't believe it. Han Feng explains that he will first soften the walls like last time to see if he can change their shape, and that he must control the area of impact, otherwise the hardening process will take a long time. He says he'll do it right now. He places his hands on the walls, surrounded by green and pink light. The guy says that purple light in combination with green not only strengthens but also restores. The curly-haired boy says he's very capable and asks if it's magic or a superpower. Han Feng explains that it's hard to explain. A guy yells at a girl to lie down. He watches what's happening. A girl, a boy and a man cover their ears and squat in response to a loud sound. Han Feng says he just strengthened it and asks why it is cracking again. The guy explains that they are blowing up the floor. The man says that if this is really the case, then it will be useless no matter how it is repaired. Han Feng says he has a dangerous idea and asks if they are willing to trust him even once. The woman says MMM. The guy says that whatever it is, the other one just has to say it. The guy says to listen carefully to what he is about to say. Chapter 24, titled, Surviving the Ice Age, begins. The sound of breaking is heard near the door, which is covered in cracks and stains. Then the door suddenly opens, and a blast of air carrying debris rushes into the room. A guy in a patterned hat tells people to pay attention to safety and gather all the supplies they can find. The man replies that it's customary. A man warns that they might be setting up an ambush, and another man tells them to check if there are supplies in the kitchen. The man says there is no one in the living room and no supplies either. The guy with the hat tells Han Feng that there is only trash and a box of seeds in the kitchen. Han Feng asks about the seeds. The guy yells that Lee Hyunhae lied to them, and she explains that she didn't lie and suggests that he's hiding them in the bedroom. A man warns another man to be careful, who explains that he wouldn't want to be shot with a gun. The man is surprised and asks what is happening. The guy screams that he's a damn thing and kicks the shield, causing the man to make a sound. The white-haired guy screams that he can't believe it, and Han Feng explains that he doesn't intend to kill. The guy shouts that Mr. Jang should be careful. A man with glasses and a man in a hat say that they are covering the entrance, and a man with black hair and a white collar shoots at the shield behind which a man is hiding, and a man with blonde hair stands nearby. Han Feng says everyone needs to leave, otherwise he won't be so polite. The man with the eye patch explains that Han Feng was polite before. The man with glasses explains that they hid supplies, neglected the community, and caused many residents to suffer and starve. He says that if they still have even a drop of conscience in their hearts, then they need to hand over the supplies, and explains that only working together will allow them to defeat this apocalypse. Han Feng says that this man's words are righteous and reverent, but explains that this could simply be theft. The man explains that there is no use talking about it now because these people are just a group of hungry wolves who want to let off steam, and he is a target for them, but if he manipulates them correctly, he can direct them where he wants. Han Feng shouts that he has no supplies and asks who said otherwise. The woman says the house was warm and lighted the last time she was there, and suggests to the man that perhaps he hid them. She warns him that if he doesn't tell the truth, he could face death. The man screams from a blow to the head. Han Feng says that Lee Huna is simply shameless for saying such things. He says that if she hadn't deceived him by exchanging his supplies for seeds, he wouldn't be in this situation today. The guy with the hat shouts that the girl lied to them, and the girl explains that she really didn't lie. Han Feng says not to start internal squabbles and explains that he has one simple way to check this. A man with glasses says that 2 people should inspect his room. Han Feng says Mr. Han won't refuse. He says there's only trash and a little girl in the room. The girl says, "Brother." The man explains that brother is scared and hungry. Han Feng says not to be afraid. Brother will find food as soon as they leave. The guy shouts that they worked so hard for half a day just for this and asks where it all is, where the supplies are. The man says he needs an explanation from Ms. Lee. Han Feng says that now that things have turned out this way, they'll have to explain themselves to everyone. A man demands a clear explanation, otherwise they'll kill him. Another man confirms that they need to explain themselves. The woman says she wasn't lying and saw it firsthand, and then explains why it happens and where it all went wrong. The man stands nearby. The guy says that it could be that Han Feng is just playing with them, and the girl explains that she is in this position because of him. The man says it's all because of that damn thing. The guy shouts that he's here. The girl says they can't let him leave. Han Feng shouts that. The girl screams that the guy hid the supplies and demands he tell the truth or she'll shoot him. The man warns his brother to be careful and says the girl pulled some kind of trick. The guy is surprised and asks if it's true. The girl says that all her supplies have been stolen from her long ago. Han Feng explains this. The girl screams that he is lying and threatens to kill him. A girl screams as she is shot in the shoulder by an arrow. A man shouts that a girl is a slut, and another man demands that she not move. The girl shouts that she is not lying and is telling the truth and asks to let her go. The girl says she can't understand why he did what he did and says it's not like him. Han Feng explains that he couldn't act differently because the situation was critical. The girl says she still doesn't agree with his decision. The man suddenly grabs the gun. The man explains that he doesn't intend to shoot because he doesn't want to kill, and warns that if the boy tries to attack, he will be forced to use his weapon. Han Feng is surprised and says he doesn't intend to fight. The man explains that he knows who he is and that he has no choice. A guy in a tasseled hat grabs a girl by the hair and screams that she really did lie to them. A man in a light coat holds a gun. The guy screams that the girl lied to them. The boy shouts that enough is enough. The man explains that the committee is not a violent group and that this room is not an execution site. Han Feng says that they should at least give her a chance to start over, even if she lied to them. The guy with glasses tells Mr. Han that he is very sorry about what happened today. The man says they are all victims and will soon give a proper explanation. Han Feng remains silent. The man says so. The man sincerely invites Han Feng to join the committee, and Han Feng is surprised. He says that they are not obliged to answer right now and can just think about it at their leisure. Han Feng says that when they come for supplies tomorrow, they should tell him what they think. The man with black hair says he can't afford to pass out because he'll be killed, and explains that if he falls, he'll die. The man with blonde hair says he's not going to kill him, and explains that he wants the man with black hair to help him. The guy with the scarf tells his bro how Han Feng says that finally. The guy says that this circus is finally over. The guy in yellow says the girl's apartment upstairs is larger and better than his. The man with dark hair explains he didn't know the girl had an apartment upstairs. Han Feng says that if it weren't for her, all of this wouldn't have been possible. He says that first you need to take things out of the apartment, and explains that you should leave the trash and boxes but not take everything away. Han Feng tells his bro to open the window in the room to let the temperature drop, and his bro asks what he's up to. He says that they should pretend that there were never any supplies here and explains that they should break down the door and see that it is empty. Han Feng explains that Jang has orchestrated such a raid that when they enter their home, public unrest will break out. The girl drinks juice through a straw. The man listens. He says that then they will start looking for the culprit and explains that he will show that he has a gun, and then Huna will take the initiative. The guy says that there are so many of them and what if they just, for example, take his weapon away from him, and Han Feng explains that this is the worst-case scenario. He explains that if Jang gets the gun, he will want to resolve everything peacefully so as not to tarnish his reputation. Han Feng explains that the gun only had one bullet and he had already used it, and the man asks what if it goes off. He says it's just part of the plan, and the man asks if that means he wants them to take the gun away on purpose. The guy with glasses says that they will just pretend that they are barely making ends meet, and Han Feng explains that their main task is completely different. The guy in the center says to destroy the committee. A hooded man tells people to get in line and not push. A woman asks people to quickly thank Uncle Jang, and a child thanks Uncle Jang. Two men sneak toward the door. The man at the table explains that this isn't just food, it's survival food, and asks not to panic. The man at the table explains that they only have one box and asks them to take one at a time. The man at the table says that if anyone takes. The man explains that this is a smoking area and asks people not to smoke here. The man explains that smoking is prohibited in this building and asks people to follow the rules. The guy asks if he checked the door to the supply closet, and the man explains that he checks every time he leaves and asks him not to worry. The guy with black hair explains that he can't fight because he has no strength, and the guy with blonde hair says that they can't just give up. The guy in the white jacket tells Han Feng he can't understand why he doesn't want to go to training, explaining that if he doesn't go, he won't be able to get stronger. Han Feng stares at him silently, holding his gloved hand to his mouth. The young man explains that, according to his observations, the first 4 floors are cleared, the 5th and 6th are occupied by administration members and residents, and access to the 7th and 8th floors is impossible. He says he thinks the warehouse may be in the basement. The guy with blonde hair explains that there's a guard on the 5th floor. He'll go up first and distract them, and the other guy should knock them out with a baton and try not to use a gun. The guy with black hair says he understands. Han Feng asks where they are, and the guy explains that maybe they went to lunch. One guy warns you to be careful, and the other says there's no one here. Han Feng remains silent. The man asks if he's sure there are supplies on these 2 floors, and Han Feng explains that there should be some, but he doesn't have any specific information. The guy with the flashlight says it's strange that there's not a soul here. He suggests searching the floor and asks everyone to shout if anything happens. The guy agrees. Han Feng says he thought he would have to fight, then explains that he is just researching. He says there are a lot of people on the committee so they can't handle them all, and the only option is to destroy them from within. The man asks how to do that. Han Feng says that the committee is friendly as long as there are supplies, and explains that if the warehouse is found and robbed, then the committee will be finished. He says that we need to be careful because someone could show up at any moment, and is surprised that it's easy to say, but who knows what apartment they keep them in. Han Feng wonders if he really found it. He says he doesn't think it could be a trap, and the man explains that it says warehouse. He explains that they also left a key. The guy with the flashlight says that maybe they just forgot to take it out and suggests opening it and taking a look. The guy yells to stop, and Han Feng shines a flashlight on the door. He says there's thin wire wrapped around the key and the handle, a typical trap. The man explains that you need to be careful because who knows what's hidden behind that door. Maybe there are bombs. The guy says that the two were talking about checking the warehouse door and maybe they were talking about a trap, and the other guy explains that this is indeed the case. Han Feng says not to touch anything and to go upstairs first to take a look, and the man agrees. He says that they will first check if there is a warehouse, and then they will think about how to open the door. The man replies that it's okay. The blonde guy says that they should take all the supplies from them, and Han Feng explains that they need to check the door again. He is silent. The man in the doorway is silent. The man with the baton is silent. He is silent. The man shouts to stop. Han Feng holds a flashlight and moves forward. He says that he will go first, and the man explains that he will cover him from behind. A boy warns his brother to be careful as a man with a club raises it to strike. The man screams. The guy screams that he is throwing a punch. A guy yells, "Get out of here." Another guy yells, "Ah." A third guy says, "Let's run." The guy says he said there was no one here during the supply drop, and the other guy explains that he couldn't get up to this floor last time. The guy shouts that they are approaching. The guy suggests going upstairs where no one should be. The man says he agrees. The image shows an empty 8th floor landing with a closed door and a broken bottle on the floor. The guy tells his bro that he has a hand, and Han Feng explains that he seems to have broken it. He says we need to hide somewhere. The man listens. The guy is surprised and says that from behind. The guy is surprised and asks what is there. Han Feng screams that something has happened to him. A man shouts, "Bro," and jumps into a dark opening. The guy screams and falls down, hitting his head. The guy is screaming. Han Feng screams. The guy says he'll save the other guy and asks him to wait a bit, and the man asks if he's okay and orders him to hang in there for now. The man asks what they are doing here, and Han Feng explains that they came to get supplies. The guy is screaming. The man says that he is what? The man says he is not as naive as a 3-year-old and explains that his interlocutor deliberately skipped the 5th and 6th floors, which means he knows something about the committee. Han Feng says he was following them. The hooded man says they genuinely thought there was no security here. The guy on the floor is surprised. Han Feng is surprised and says, "Oh." The man explains that he was the one who beat everyone up like that. The man says to catch him. The guy asks if there is anyone else here. The man orders to search everything. Han Feng is surprised that it is Brother Li. The man says, The guy asks. The man walks away. Han Feng explains that he won't fight this time because he wants to rest, and explains that he was very tired last time. The man understands and suggests that Han Feng take it easy. Han Feng explains that if he doesn't fight, the team might lose. But a man picks up the phone. The man explains that it will be the 4th floor in height, and the guy says that it is the 8th floor. What is he going to do? The man explains that the snow is now somewhere at the level of the 3rd or 4th floor, and therefore there is not much to fall from here. Man says it's up to him to decide whether to jump or be beaten to death. Han Feng notices the door breaking and is surprised that he won't fall to his death. There is a sharp sound of a blow on the door. 2 men shout that they have caught Han Feng, who is trying to escape. A man runs down snow-covered stairs. Han Feng screams and releases powerful purple energy from his hand. The man stands up abruptly, throwing away snow, and a bright purple light flashes next to him. The man is surprised. Han Feng screams and falls into the snow. The guy yells that there's another one, and the other guy says that he survived. Han Feng says he can't believe this is happening. A man breaks a window with his fist. A guy sits in the snow and looks at him. Han Feng says fuck. A man falls next to a destroyed building amid a snowstorm. The image shows a scene of a severe snowstorm with icy windows. obscuring the outline of a car. 3 men burst into the room, one of them swinging a bat. The man says that we need to go down and catch up with them. He explains that they have disappeared, and says that it is better to report this to Mr. Jang. The boy explains that he will bring more papers to keep the fire going. The man says that they need to keep warm and not freeze. Han Feng says that they must stick together and not lose hope. He says the guy is good. Han Feng explains that if it weren't for him, he might have been discovered, and the man says that they are going to the 5th floor, after which Han Feng is surprised. The man explains that they'll think they ran down, meaning there's a good chance there'll be an ambush. He says he understands and can't breathe. The narrator explains that Han Feng's words defied logic, and he didn't particularly trust them, but the facts. A man asks Han Feng if he is afraid. The man explains that he is an ordinary corpse. Han Feng remains silent. He wonders why the man helped him. The man explains that although he now wants to kill Han Feng, the fact that he didn't fall into the trap on the 7th floor proves that he has brains. The man explains that maybe he can tell him everything he knows about whom. The man explains that if Han Feng doesn't talk, he will have a new human shield, and Han Feng is surprised. He explains that, judging by the beaten guards, he came either to steal supplies or to annoy the committee, and that their presence interfered with his plans. Han Feng says that the other person has something against them. The man says that one can say that and explains that if it weren't for Jiang Shui's secret. Han Feng shouts that what other secret is there? A man screams. The man says that the guy apparently knows him and that there is some kind of connection between them. Han Feng explains that he can't afford to be weak, because weakness means death, and he doesn't want to die. The man explains that in this world, no one can be trusted, and only the strong survive. Han Feng says he will always fight to protect those he cares about. The man says that you can either lay out everything you know about the committee. The man explains that you will either become like him. Han Feng listens. He says that it is up to the interlocutor to decide. The guy says Jiang came to his house with explosives and took his supplies. A gloved hand suddenly grabs the gun. The guy says that he got this to get revenge on them, and explains that even with just one gun he had no chance against them. He didn't see any other way out. Han Feng is surprised that the mixture of false facts and a gun is credible. The man says the committee won't be scared by an unloaded gun. The man explains that the fact that he didn't take it from Han Feng proves it, and Han Feng says yes. He is surprised that they seem to believe him and explains that he doesn't understand why they didn't take it away then. The man explains that the first reason is that he was simply putting on a show to maintain his leadership position, and the second is that he has a more powerful weapon. The man asks if he understood correctly that Han Feng brought his friend to deal with Jang. Han Feng says that without his friend and the committee, things will be more or less calm. The man explains that the committee's initial intentions were good and they did help some survive. The man explains that Zhang's ideology forces everyone to believe that only violence can lead to a better life, and even if the apocalypse ends, these shameless individuals cannot return to society. Han Feng says the committee must be destroyed. The man with white hair remains silent. The hooded man says he can't wait any longer. He explains that they must wait until the fire goes out. The man says that if he falls, what can they do? The guy says that everything will ultimately end in robberies and fights, and asks if the other person has ever considered what society would be like if it were unregulated. The man explains that in their world, the strong dominate the weak, and although he hates Jiang, the guy is surprised, and the man asks if he wants to get a third party's opinion. The man suddenly opens the door, and the guy is surprised. The man jerks away from the approaching red object. The man suddenly punches the guy. The guy screams and suddenly grabs the hand of another guy, who is surprised. The man says HM, clutching a tied object in his hands. A man screams. The guy is yelling for them to stop. The guy says Nurse Jean? The man explains that the girl is surprised when she calls Mr. Han. The girl says she didn't mean to eavesdrop. The girl explains that she simply gathered supplies for Grandpa Lee and came to give them to him. But as soon as she entered, she saw that he had already died. Then she heard a noise, became frightened, and hid in the room. The boy explains that he understood. The man says the girl is partly responsible for his death, and that his selfless dedication to the cause is nothing more than a joke. The woman says that the interlocutor is right, but she does not regret it. The girl says she can be called cruel and heartless, but only by surviving can she save more people. The man remains silent. Han Feng says that the girl joined Mr. Jen to come here, and the girl explains that he gave her a pass. The girl says she had plenty of supplies and had no reason to refuse. The woman says that Mr. Jang drove out many old people and Grandfather Li was one of them, and by the time she found out about it, it was too late and Grandfather Li died anyway. Han Feng listens. The man explains that the committee will be able to hold on longer without the burden that is weighing it down, and that in Zhang's place he would do the same. He says that Brother Li spoke of the emergence of a new force in society that is opposed to the committee, and suggests that Mr. Zhang is seeking to eradicate. The man explains that he expels the old, the weak, the sick, and the disabled, leaving supplies for the young and strong, and that he also used explosives to take the supplies. Han Feng says there's a possibility. The girl says he's going to start a war with them. The man explains he's going to start a war with them. The man says he must find a weapon if it's true, and Han Feng explains that. The man asks if he will go alone, and he explains what will happen if he does not find. Han Feng says he doesn't want to be buried with the other villagers, and that if he finds an arsenal of weapons, he will have a way to survive. The man is silent. Han Feng tells the man to step aside if he is so unwilling to die. The man explains that in this apocalyptic world, Zhang's committee is only a small force, and in the future, the battles for survival will only become greater. The man explains that the winner will be the one who survives until the end. Han Feng says he can't believe they're in a place like this and explains they need to be careful. The girl explains it's cold here and they need to find a way to warm up. A girl asks a man named Han if she can help him with anything. Han Feng says he doesn't want to drag the girl into trouble. The girl says that if this is true, the committee is in danger, and she was angry when she heard that Mr. Zhang stole their supplies. The guy tries to say something. The girl is surprised that she can't move. Han Feng remains silent. The guy says he has something to do for his interlocutor and thanks him. The guy with the flashlight asks the other one if he's sure the other one was Han Feng, and he explains that he saw it with his own eyes 100%. The guy says they can't go any further because there's a monster there. Han Feng says Han Feng. The sounds of breaking glass and loud bangs are heard in the hallway. The guy is screaming. The man shouts that Mr. Zhang already let him go once and he dared to steal supplies and kicks the man who says it hurts. The guy shouts that he will show and see if the other one dares to steal something else. The man tells them to leave the man lying down and explains that Mr. Zhang has asked everyone to gather upstairs. Another man explains that it's okay. A man lies tied with ropes. The man explains that his body is covered in poison and if anyone touches him, they will die. The guy says phew and explains that he's finally gone. The guy says that as soon as he heals all his injuries, he will go in search of a weapons depot and there is no time to waste. A purple flame emanates from the rope. Han Feng explains that there isn't even a fracture, but the treatment was too energy-consuming and he almost lost consciousness, and then says that he needs to somehow train this thing so that this doesn't happen every time. The guy is surprised to hear a sound outside the door. The guy asks if he should just leave it there. The man explains that Mr. Zhang needs to give instructions first, and then deal with him. Han Feng screams. A man with blonde hair lies nearby. The guy says they caught someone else. The guy shouts that he is a brother. The man says the slap actually worked. The man explains that the next time he hits, he needs to hit the other cheek because he can no longer feel the left side of his face. Han Feng says okay and asks what happened there. The man explains that he was dragged into the room and had no choice but to break down the elevator door and hide there. The guy says that he then noticed a hole in the floor, which turned out to be very deep. The guy says that, afraid that these guys would come in, he climbed down the rope. The guy says he thought it would take him somewhere on the ground floor, but he ended up in an underground parking lot, and it was empty. The man says he noticed a pile of sealed boxes. The guy says that when he opened one, he saw that it was filled with sausage, and each stick was as thick as his forearm. The guy says that he was about to take one for a test, when suddenly he heard a rustling sound behind him. The man says he didn't have time to react. The guy with the white scarf explains that he now understands why this committee is so revered, because there were piles of very long sausages there. Han Feng says that it really is a sausage. The guy explains that if they really had that much food, then why did they use explosives to rob his apartment? He asks if there was anything written on the packaging. The man explains that there was nothing written on the packaging, and he's never seen such large sausage sticks before. He says, the guy asks why Mr. Jang suddenly wanted them to get rid of Li Zi, since he always wanted to lure him over to their side. The guy screams that they want to kill him, and Han Feng is surprised. The hand turns the door handle. The guy asks where he is if they left him here, and the other guy explains that he needs to make sure he ties him up tightly. The man says to check under the bed. A man with red eyes and gloves suddenly rushes forward. Han Feng explains that Jang sent them to kill the man, and now he'll have to go down to check out the situation. The guy asks what they'll do with the boxes. Han Feng explains that he's already thought of everything and will meet with their partner first. The guy with curly hair says that the girl has appeared again, and he asks which one. The man explains that the one who pulled out the gun and wanted to kill remembers. Han Feng says, "Oh." The guy shouts that he is Li Huina, and he explains something by raising his hand. Han Feng shouts at them not to open the door and let Li Hui know he's in the apartment, but the man stutters. Han Feng calls out and asks if anyone can hear him, and the man repeats "Shu." A man says she needs to be saved, and another man confirms this. Han Feng says there is no one, and the man asks him to wait. The guy asks what's going on there and why it's so noisy. The young man explains that the wounded and elderly are heading upstairs, while the rest are taking up arms and gathering in the basement. Han Feng says that if they are allowed to attack, the supplies will be looted and they will starve, so they must be prevented from entering the warehouse at all costs. The guy calls Zheng Hao. The man explains he's not sure, but the situation isn't going their way. He suggests they put on masks and blend in, to which the guy agrees. A man in a hood with glasses and a man in a hood with a scarf explain that the door needs to be closed. The man in the hood with a scarf explains that the door should be closed. The man in the hood with glasses says that the door is closed. The man in the hat with a visor explains. The guy is screaming. A man screams as he falls to the ground while a group of men stand over him. The guy is screaming, the man is breathing heavily, the man is breathing heavily, the man is breathing heavily. The guy screams that he's in shock. Han Feng is surprised. The girl is surprised that someone is looking at her. The man explains that he can't hear anything and wonders if Han Feng really left. The girl asks Li Hui. The girl asks what the other girl is doing here, and the other girl replies, "Oh." The guy explains that he is looking for something to eat. The girl is surprised, asking if she wants to eat. The woman says that's why she brought so many people with her. The woman asks what the girl is doing here, and the girl explains that she is doing her job and healing people. The guy says he remembers that Han Feng Bolin and the girl are acquainted. The woman explains that Han Feng Bolin knows them. The girl says there's something strange about this place. A man with long blonde hair explains that there used to be a lot of people here, but now they've all disappeared, and he can't figure out where they could have gone. The other men are silent and listen intently. The girl says Mr. Jang asked her not to interfere with her work. The man laughs, and another man explains that Han Feng will definitely open the door with her. The guy asks Nurse Jean for forgiveness, and she demands that he let her go, otherwise. The girl screams that you will regret it. The man is surprised. The girl screams and throws off two men. The three onlookers are silent. The girl says she doesn't care what the others are up to and asks to be allowed to do her own thing. The man explains that they backed away. The man explains that it is a knife. A guy yells "bastard" and punches a woman who says "ouch." The pink-haired woman blinks and steps back as feathers fly off her arm. The woman explains that she is very strong, so you need to be careful. A man screams. A man in a hat with ear flaps is surprised at what is happening, and a girl with a knife asks what is going on. A woman screams, "Ah!" A man in a fur hat is surprised, and a woman in a red jacket exclaims. Han Feng stands with a blue light on his chest, various weapons flying around him. He folds his fingers into different gestures, then concentrates the energy in the form of a glowing blue ball on his stomach. The girl is surprised that these are her clothes. A man shouts that this is unfair power. Another man shouts. A man yells to go to hell and punches another man. A hooded man punches another man in the head while two men fight in the background. The guy is surprised that he just hit him and he is still able to run, and the man explains that his brother's blow. The man says he was really good, then yells that he's going to kill the idiot. Han Feng says the enhanced strike was so powerful. The black-haired man strikes, and the blonde-haired man stands behind him. The guy shouts that it's Han Feng and Li Zi, and the man curses in shock. Han Feng says that if they are caught again, everything will be over and they need to figure out how to escape. He says that he will take the girl and he will detain them and they will meet later at their place. The man asks how he will go alone. He explains that he knows what he is doing. The man shouts that the guy should come here. The guy with the lantern falls to the ground. The man runs after him with the lantern. The light of the lantern illuminates the space. The guy is shouting to be listened to. Han Feng says he was one of those who raised the prices of food back then so that everyone would starve to death. He stands on the roof of the car and raises a flashlight up, calling on everyone to remain silent. Han Feng says he can't take it anymore and will fight to the end, while the man next to him explains that they must stick together and never give up. The man on the left explains that despite the difficulties, they will surely win. The man screams that he will kill him if he doesn't get out of the way and calls him an arrogant bastard who will be beaten to death. But he runs with a flashlight in his hand. The man says that the entrance and exit to the parking lot are closed by iron gates. But as soon as he uses the ability, a guy screams when he gets hit in the chest and screams again. The boy screams and is thrown back by the impact, crashing into a wall. The man stands on the hood of the car, preparing for the next move. A man says he's at a dead end. Another man says grab him, we'll teach the bastard a lesson, and swears at him. Han Feng explains that he can't breathe. He explains that he can create an energy ball. A man says the gate is glowing, another man asks what it is, and a third man exclaims what it is. A man stands silently at the closed exit. The man is surprised that the glow has disappeared, and the man silently holds the flashlight. Han Feng shouts that they must come closer. The image shows a scene with a mysterious background and sounds that convey shaking or vibration, without the participation of characters and speech. A crowd of people moves forward as a powerful stream of water falls on them from above. The man says there is an avalanche and urges people to run quickly. A car crashes into a crowd of people, causing a loud explosion and panic among them. The man screams, "What the hell?" A man yells at them to leave, and another man orders them to run faster. On the mountainside lie the remains of equipment and destroyed structures, covered in snow and ice. Among them are the remains of a screen with a sign partially reading, "Available." Steam rises from the melting snow. A man's hand suddenly plunges into the water. The guy screams and laughs. Han Feng says he's not even tired after softening such a large object, explaining that he's probably gotten used to it. The man asks if he wants to die here. The man is silent. He is surprised. Han Feng said he felt like he was being followed by a man. The guy says the avalanche has passed. The man listens attentively. The man yells at the guy to come here, and the guy says that it hurts. The corner of the first floor is indicated. The boy asks who he is and why he helped him. The man replies that he is Li Zhenghao. The boy is surprised and explains that he realized it was Li Zhenghao, who is fighting Jiang Shui. The man says exactly. Han Feng wonders what he is doing. A man offers cooperation. He asks if he refused earlier. The man explains that he changed his mind. Han Feng says he's not trying to deceive him. The man says that he is offering what he wanted and demands either consent or refusal, but he remains silent. Han Feng says that if he cooperates with him, there will be a greater chance of success. The man says okay. He explains that although he doesn't trust the man, they have common goals. The guy says they will act together.